Good afternoon, dear participants.
Good afternoon.
Okay. On behalf of the Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka, I am glad to welcome all of you to the webinar on fast-tracking building approvals to attract more investments. I take this opportunity to especially welcome Major General V. Udaya B. Nanakara, Chairman of the Urban Development Authority. We are honored by his presence, which all undoubtedly add value to these sessions. I also appreciate the contributions of architect Ling Chun Beng from Singapore and other presenters. The opening address would be made by Engineer Major Anjit Gunatilaka, President, Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka, and Major General V. Udaya B. Nanakkara, Chairman of the UDA. This session is moderated by Architect Jayantha Pereira, the President-elect, Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka. This event is possible because of the generous contribution by our sponsor, Rhino Roofing Products Limited. We will listen to few minutes to Rhino Products and start the sessions now.
Ceiling. Color up. Strip ceiling. Show your true colors to the whole world.
හොඳ අපිට කාටවත් අවුරු දැක්කාම ඒ දැක්ක ගමන් මේගොල්ලන්ට ඒක ආසීතන විදිහේ ගයක් හදන්න.
විදිහට තමයි මේක එන්නේ. අතරේ ෂීට් එක කැලි පහක් තියෙනවා මේක පැකට් එකක. මේක මේ අපි අර කිව්වා ටර්නයින් සිස්ටම් එක මෙතනින් බලා ගන්න පුළුවන්. මේකේ තියෙනවා ඒකට ගොඩක් අපිට බෙනිෆිට්ස් එකක් ෆයර් රෙසිස්ටර් ඊළඟට මේ ඒක පාටල් වලින් එනවා. මේ පාටල් කීපයක් වෙනවා. අපි මේ කස්ටමර්ස් තෝරගත්තේ මේක පාට. මේක තමයි දැන් මේ තියෙන මේක පාට. ඊළඟට මේක ඕන තරම් හොදන්න කරන්න පුළුවන් කිලුට වෙන්නේ නැහැ. ගොඩක් ප්‍රමාණයක් තිබුණා නිසා අපිට හෙට මෙහෙට ගෙනියන්න හරිම පහසුවක් වුණා. දැන් මේක තත්තු 4ක වගේ බිල්ඩින් එකක්. ඒක උඩම හත්කොට හරිම ලේසියෙන් ගෙනියන්න පුළුවන්.
ඒකයි මේ සිවිල් සීට් එක අපිට පාස්වර්ඩ් තියෙනවා. අනිත් සීට් වලට වඩා මොකද උඩට ගන්න කරන්න ආරේ මේ වුණත් කරලයක් නෑ ලේසි. අනිත් එක අපි අතර සීට් එක අරෝපෝරන් ගන්නකොට පේන්ට් කරලා ගන්නකොට තීරෙනවා. නමුත් මේක එහෙම නම් මේවක් නෑ අපේ වැඩ ගන්න පහසුයි.
ඒක ගස්වැල් වලට මිනිස්සු ආදරය කරන අය ඉන්නවනේ. ගස් ගැන හිතනවනේ. රට ගැන හිතනවනේ. ලෝකය ගැන හිතනවනේ. මිනිස්සු කියනවා කොළඹ ඔක්සිජන් අඩුයි. තව දවසේ කාලේදී ගම් පහඩුයි. තව දැනගි තව මේ ලංකාවේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක 22කින් අඩුයි. ඊට පස්සේ අපි කතා කරනවා ආරක කරන්න මේක කරන්න. ඒක හොඳම ඔප්ෂන් එක තමයි අපි වැඩ කරනවා. අපේ වැඩ කටයුතු වලදී අර ගස් වලට ආදේශකය විදිහට තියෙන දේවල් පාවිච්චි කරනවා. ඒක මම හිතන්නේ ගස් වලට ආදරය කරන පරිසරයට ආදරය කරන මිනිස්සු තරක් මේ ඉන්නවනම් මිනිස්සු කරන්න හොඳ දෙයක්.
Thank you very much, Rhino Roofing Products Limited. Now, I would like to cordially invite the President of the Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka. I call upon Engineer Major Ranjit Gunathilaka to make the opening address of this webinar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen who have joined this webinar this afternoon. Firstly, I must welcome our guest speaker, architect Lim Chun Kiang, and Chairman UDA General Udayanakara. Bandara Herat. CEO of CCI, Engineer Colonel Nisanka Vijayaratna, President-elect Architect Jayantha Perera. Today's our subject, or the webinar subject, is fast-tracking building approval for investors, whether it is public or private. I don't want to get into the details of what today's presenter speaker is going to speak. I just want to touch the individual roles of those gentlemen. Firstly, the issue is who are affected this present situation of delayed approval process is the applications of individuals or the corporates or investors, or finally the developers of this country, which finally affect the total country in different ways, whether it's our consultants, architects, engineers, contractors, manufacturers, everybody in this country, which is the construction industry. And it's the responsibility of the chamber as the apex representative body of all these people to make a voice and to educate the general public on what is happening, where we are faced with, how we should overcome. For that matter, we have called here the chairman of UDA, General Udayanakara, and also Director UDA, Mr. Lalit Vijayaratna. They are the approving authority, in short, in the final. Then also the how these approvals taking place in developed countries, much closer countries, Singapore, and we have invited Mr. Architect Lim Chun to say how 20 years, for the last 20 years, what sort of improvement had been done in Singapore in this process, and whether where Sri Lanka stands, that we all can decide where Sri Lanka stands. Then how I stand on this is my experience in the corporate sector. It takes minimum of 3 months to a period of 3 years, or in very complicated cases, even more than 3 years. But this has been identified by most of the people and discussed by most of the people, but for the last 20 years to us, there's no firm solution found. I thank the President of His Excellency, the President of the country. About a couple of months back, he wanted to go through the all process of this delayed process and how to expedite. In that, he appointed a special commission which made various recommendations how to make this within the law, how to make it quick. So what was proposed by the chamber with Mr. Colonel Vijayaratna, myself, and Mr. Lianarachi, we made a firm proposal how to make it within 3 weeks. And finally, this was listed in the final report as number 1, which is the most important for the industry. So why we should achieve this? To simply to say, I know few investors, few developers, they drop their planning of investment and development simply because of this long procedure and time taken. I see a different side of the whole issue. It's more than the approval. I approve in authority and the system. I regret to say is mostly it is the individualism and personal decision of the people who are supposed to make a quick decision. They take very long decision. They are completely ignorant of the affected party, whether the developer or investor, and they take the final decision. To take that final decision also, when you send reminders in most of the places, even the government sector authorities, even the reminders were not responded. Very sorry to say, but this is what is happening. So with this 3 weeks process, I suggest that this will somewhat or other take place, and definitely it's a credit point to the chamber if it takes place, because it's something very important for the country. Then I also wish to take the side of why we say that this should be shortened, simply because, right, one should not forget, especially the, I don't blame the government sector, all officials, but especially all those people should see what's the development happening in this country and the investors' income and all that which comes to the business people, tax-paying people, taxes. When you import, it's a custom duty, then custom taxes and various taxes. Only final bring the government or the state officers and other expenses of this country. It's not only the salaries, it's the healthcare, education, and other means of expenses that the government doing on behalf of this public. And public and other people. So that is reuse for the benefit of the country. So the people who are taking this decision, they should understand, with all apology, I wish to mention, not 100% of their education, at least 90% of these people should understand their free education was to respect their free education and at least make these processes quicker and respect these investors and respect these developers. And if there is a way of call them and advise them, help them how to make the process quicker, is the best way for us to look into the future of this country and future of the construction industry. So I finally, all the other issues will be taken up with the our presenters in a very careful way, because we have selected the today's presenters fully, and architect Chantapara will see that how finally all your questions within the possible time to give you proper clarifications, and our webinar will be successful within the next few months. Whoever the party is going to apply for this short period process, if we can achieve 3 weeks. So I leave it. I wish you all this evening a very fruitful and educational evening, and also strategical evening, which we make the future of this country and the development is better. Thank you very much for all. Finally, I thank you all listeners for attending this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Major Ranjit Gunadilaka, the President, CCS Sri Lanka. I welcome Major General V. Udaya B. Nanakara, Chairman of the Urban Development Authority, to address the webinar participants now.
Okay, right. I quote, design and establish a system to get all the approvals from one place. Reduce time taken for approvals to a maximum of 3 weeks, unquote. The above mentioned perceptions are highlighted in His Excellency the President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's policy statement, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor. In strategic provisions under facilitating a speedy approval process for the construction industry in order to formulate a people-friendly and people-oriented economy. Engineer Major Ranjit Gunathilaka, President, Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka, Engineer Colonel Nisanka Wijeratna, Secretary General and Chief Executive Officer, Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka, corporate members of Chamber of Construction Industry, moderator Architect Jayanta, eminent guest speakers, participants of the seminar. Acceleration of the building approval process has become a need of the day, not only for investors, I believe, but also to the general public who wanted to build his own dream home. Construction impacts on everyone across the globe. The construction industry accounts for 6% of global GDP and is considered to be a powerful stimulant of economic growth. Sri Lanka too will continue to witness a continuous increase in construction-related development activities. Large-scale infrastructure projects are already in the pipeline, and the country's mega port city development project is open for construction activities. In Sri Lanka, the construction industry contributes only 7.1% to the GDP of the country and is considered to be one of the major drivers of economic development in Sri Lanka. Despite the rosy picture as mentioned above, the Sri Lankan construction industry itself has been facing severe difficulties and financial losses and is not able to capitalize on the growth opportunities in fast-tracking investment. I know you will agree with me, for the last 6-7 years, the construction industry is going on a roller coaster journey. Governments around the world can focus on implementing public policy reforms that reduce the time and cost to obtain permission to build, as well as improve construction quality standards. In line with that, construction permits simplified the approval process by streamlining interactions with agencies for pre-approvals and inspections, where UDA is playing a crucial role in streamlining the same with time-to-time such developments need to be adapted with the blessings of the various stakeholders in the country. It should be clear that ease of doing business has played a critical role in this context, and UDA is willing to join hand with relevant agencies in elevating the standards of the Sri Lankan construction industry. When attracting foreign investment to the country, the application process for construction through a single window arm with one-stop unit should be the main focus area of the UDA. And we have taken a lot of initiatives in this regard. Currently, there are many government institutions and authorities that are involved in construction-related matters, either directly or indirectly, namely SEDA, NDRO, RDA, National Water Supply and Drainage Board, CEB, Central Environment Authority, Land Reform Commission, Land Commissioners Department, Land Registry, Municipal Council, Fire Department is few of them, in addition to the UDA. So this institutional contribution is also a key factor in fast-tracking this building development approval process. In my personal opinion, I suggest you to look into following areas of concern too. Take out the ego of power vested in the organization. Validity period should be extended up to 3 years and renewal to be made during a 2-year interval. Mind you, these things will have to be changed because it's all included in the Act and we need to change the Act. And you all know how long it will take. Dedicated court exclusively for construction industry related matters. Take measures to minimize malpractices. I mean, don't encourage malpractices. Establishment of dedicated unit under the Ministry of Finance for local and foreign investors. And finally, get into the good books of different investment promotion agencies. Currently, the building approval process in Sri Lanka, including all clearances, take at least 6 to 12 months. As a solution, UDA has introduced an online application system to expedite existing approval system within the UDA, but it has not been able to solve the entire problem. The application process with other line agencies still remain unchanged. Therefore, there is a requirement for centralized promotion and facilitation center established to assist investors in the development approval process. Accordingly, UDA, with the blessings of His Excellency the President, has decided to establish a one-stop unit for issuing approvals and clearances. This unit will act as a boosting facilitator for the developer. Let's together meet this challenge for the benefit of everyone. This industry, I mean the construction industry, has many professionals with foreign exposure and I request all of them to share their experience on a common table to make this a success. Look into the technological aspects too to develop a user-friendly system. I request Chamber of Construction of Sri Lanka to play a leading role with its professionals to assist UDA to make this exercise a success. I will be failing in my duties if not mention the UDA current commitment in the island. Currently, for housing, UDA, there are 24 projects building 10,305 housing units. Total expenditure estimated 90 billion. And also there are 4 strategic cities which we have selected: Kandy, Galle, Jaffna, and Anuradhapura. There will be 25 projects currently going on with 6 billion rupees allocation. And also we have many more other projects like 9 province development projects and lagging area projects like the construction work started during the previous regime, and with the advice of His Excellency the President, the continuation of those projects and completion. So those are called lagging area projects. And public institution projects where township development, bus stand development, public market, playground, landscaping, sanitary facilities, and also the walking track projects. There is a huge request from all over the country, and currently we have undertaken 30 such projects, spending 1.6 billion. And the latest is 100 city development project, which every district is getting 4 projects, 4 cities development project. It's a facelifting project of that city for the estimate of about 20 million rupees for each project. And total expenditure estimated will be 2 billion rupees. And the beauty of this is that we are selecting the contractors from the respective district itself to give them a chance to earn some money as well as to build up their own village. Catering for the Colombo car parking problem. We have currently started 4 projects. That's one in Peta, one in Fort, one in Narayanpeta, and one in Union Place. Also, we are going to start a new project in General Hospital area, where Norris Canal Road, to cater for the car parking problem, those who are coming to the hospital. Finally, UDA is currently lined up 42 foreign investment projects planned, and I request and I need your assistance to find a suitable foreign investors. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you, Chamber of Construction of Sri Lanka and its executive committee for organizing this seminar. I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Major General Uday Nanakara, the Chairman UDA. To continue with the webinar presentations, I would call upon the moderator, Architect Jayantha Pereira, President-elect, the Chamber of Construction Industry of Sri Lanka, to take over these sessions from now. Over to you, Architect Jayantha Pereira.
Thank you, Kapila. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and good evening to our friend from Singapore. Welcome to the webinar organized by the CCISL on the subject fast-tracking planning and building approvals in Sri Lanka. I'm Architect Jayantha Pereira, President-elect of the CCI, and will be your moderator for today's webinar. Before going into details, I need to profusely thank the Chairman of UDA, Major General Retired Uday Nanakara, for being with us as the chief guest for this webinar. Thank you very much, Mr. Nanakara. Also, I must thank the introductory speech made by our President, Ranjit Gunatilaka. Thank you, Ranjit, for that. Now I need to explain some housekeeping to be adhered during the course of the webinar. Please keep your mics muted during the webinar, except the speaker. All the others, please keep your mics muted. We have four presentations today, and I would like to inform that if you have questions, please put that on the chat box. At the end of the sessions,
during the Q&A session, I will take them up one by one according to the order. We have 4 presentations today, and I request each presenter to keep to your time. So let us start the sessions. Our first presenter today is architect Rohana Bandaraherath. He is a graduate from the University of Moratuwa and has a long-standing practice in the private sector. Has held many senior positions in large consultancy practices here and abroad, and presently running his own practice in the name of RBH Design Group. Architect Herath is a fellow member of the SLIA, Institute of Chartered Professional Managers, and International Institute of Management in Hong Kong, and he is a life member of OPA. International Council he's a member of the International Council of Monuments and Sites and Society of Wildlife and Nature Protection. He's an international associate of the American Institute of Architects, an accredited professional for Green Building Council of Sri Lanka. He has served as a visiting lecturer for University of Moratuwa, Kelaniya, Colombo for several years and currently engaged in his doctoral studies. He has served as, he is the current president-elect of the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects. And Architect Herath will be talking to us today on the problems encountered and how, and now is obtaining building approvals. He will elaborate on 4 areas, that is the client investor, consultants, builders, and approving agencies. No project can be implemented without approvals. Therefore, the role of project approving agency are very important. Therefore, it is a timely requirement to establish a trouble-free, quick approval process. In the case of doing business, our country is 99th place out of 190 countries. The project approval process has created a significant impact on our position. So please let me invite Architect Rohana Bandaraherath. The stage is up to you, Rohana. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Architect Past President Jayanta Perera, and also President CCI, Engineer.
Rohana, your mic is muted.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I must thank President CCI, Engineer Ranjit Gunatilekar, and President-elect Architect Jayanta Perera, and Secretary General Mr. Nisanka Vijayaratna for inviting me for the presentation. And also, I must thank all the participants today. Dear ladies and gentlemen, my topic today is problems encountered now in obtaining building approvals. Let's quickly move into the topic. To my experience in this sector, there are 4 main parties who involved to make a project a reality. I recognize these 4 parties as 4 pillars. One is client or investor or a developer or a project owner. Then the team of consultants and project approving agencies, as well as builders we call as constructors, without which we cannot think about a realistic project. We must also keep in mind that no legal project can be implemented without approvals. Therefore, the role of project approving agencies are very important, and it is timely requirement to establish a trouble-free, fast-track approval process. Perhaps you may not be aware, ladies and gentlemen, in the ease of doing business index, our country is holding 99 position out of 190 countries in the world. And project approval process has created a significant impact to hold this position. So we also keep in mind that 7% of our Sri Lankan population is directly surviving with this industry and also contributing 7% to our GDP. So just think about the impact this particular industry creates to our social economic context. So let's move on to the subject today. We all know that we have two main project approving agencies in this country. One is UDA, they operate especially in UDA declared areas. They have many regional offices spread out all over the island, covering 9 provinces and 25 districts, and also spreading nearly 6,900 Gram Nildari divisions. So now you can see the magnitude, how the area they own. Then we have local authorities. In addition to UDA declared areas, they also operate. And there are non-declared areas which are coming under Town and House and Town Improvement Ordinance. But this presentation, we are trying to discuss today the UDA involvement in the approval process. So we all know, if you look at UDA approval process today, we can experience two major steps. The step one is preliminary planning clearance. So UDA issued a basic guideline, so how you should submit your plans, and also give us an indication about supporting agencies which we need to go and take other approvals. If you look at preliminary planning clearance process today, we all have experience. The supporting approval agencies mentioned in some PPCs are really irrelevant to these projects. For example, if I highlight coast conservation department clearance or an archaeological department clearance or a civil aviation clearance, without having the proper study, they just specify the clearance for a project going to happen in mid of Colombo. I don't think the relevance between coast conservation clearance and a project happening in Colombo city center. Then we all know that there are no archaeological monuments in center of Colombo. So I think these things are not necessary. And also, if there are two tall buildings and the project is applied for a small building in a small site. We don't need civil aviation clearance since the building is compared to small in that particular case. So I think with the issue of PPC, we have to carefully look into these matters. It is the responsibility of the officers who come and visit the site before they issue such clearances. So this will reduce the burden for the developers as well as the consultants to go around getting approvals for the formal development permit submissions. And also some valuable decisions taken by UDA, especially in the planning committee level, are not properly recorded and not properly communicated to the general public, especially to the developers and consultants in this country. As a result of that, a lot of people, especially the developers, are questioning us. If you cannot go into these flow areas and these plot coverages and FAR. So they quote some projects and challenge us. So if they can take the approval from that, why not you? So I know the UDA has given those approval with good intention, thinking about the country's development. I would like to identify this as an issue and a problem, especially with regard to keeping of records. So this can be, and this should be resolved by UDAN to avoid misunderstandings and misinterpretation among our societies. The step 2, the issuing of development permit. We need to gather all the supporting approvals. Step 1. So what are the problems encountered by those areas by developers, consultants, or builders? So let me look at our own territories, professionals and professional environments, and using their skills, the property, especially in the area of duty of care. I think competency levels of our own consultants in preparation of survey plans, architectural drawings, structural engineering drawings, many drawings, then it's referred to UDA, then checking of plans, then having meetings for several discussions. We need to develop our competencies and our skills and do our homework and try to do our level best in those areas. This is common to all professions, since everybody does mistakes, including who serve all approving agencies. So let me go to the next area, obtaining of street lines and building lines from authorities. I think if you look at Colombo Municipal Council they issue street line and building line certificates. And also, they clearly marked street lines and building lines in their survey plans and issued. So during the construction, their surveyors come and marked without having any issues or ambiguity, developers can proceed. But if we look at the other areas of Colombo and other areas of the island, they only issue a letter, a clearance letter, for us to go and determine the road centers and street lines and building lines. I think that is one such area that we have to look into. So there are areas that we have to grant some of the portions of the land to local authorities. So in which case, we have to rethink about computing our, especially plot coverages and FAR. So according to the regulations, nobody is allowed to count the whole site under computation of plot coverage and FAR. I think UDA should think of this area and at least to consider whatever the portion sacrificed to add to FAR. So I would like to suggest this particular point from the view of developers. We'll go to the next point then. We all know that we need to get clearances from CB. As Sri Lankans, we all know that we have a power crisis. We don't have a proper power to serve our demand. To cater that, we need to have transformers in our buildings, as well as CB rooms and transformers fixed in our buildings. If the areas are ample, I don't think that will be an issue. So we have come across that side. We are dealing with different shapes and challenges, especially with regard to land shapes and smaller sites. We all know that the ground floor area is very, very important for customers, and it has more and more sales value. Just imagine when we allocate a very important area for a transformer or a CB room. So what would be the position of the developer? So we have to have very hot argument to convince them about these areas. I think our engineers, architects, as well as our CB engineers must sit together and try to find a workable and flexible solution to overcome this particular issue. The next point which I have identified is the fire department clearance. We all know that there is a published document done by SIDA on fire regulations. We cannot stick to that. Our MEP engineers knows how difficult to do a correct plan to get fire approval in a very short period. I propose to fire department, we must have a proper document for public use so that our consultants can read it and understand, and also they can show it their investors and resolve many of the areas. So the next area we have to look into the clearance of water and drainage board. Proper data must be available with these organized or with these organizations about capacity
Time is running out.
and usage of demand, and also need to develop a proper guideline for consultants. Then the next area we have identified as solid waste management. We all know that local authorities must be flexible enough to choose a location to handle this garbage room, collection room, without forcing consultants to locate it in a very prominent area in ground floors. So we have many options, many opportunities, and consultants can come out with a lot of innovative solutions to address this particular issue. Then the clearance from aviation, as I mentioned earlier, so they can identify particular critical zones which they want to control building heights. If they have such records, so immediately they can communicate with UDA, so without referring to investors to get it cleared. Then again, as I mentioned earlier, clearance from cost conservation department. Why not cost conservation department could demarcate their territories and inform the UDA so that we all know what are the projects that we need to go ahead with cost conservation clearance and what are the areas that we don't need. So then the next one is archaeological clearance. If archaeological department can maintain a proper database to address this issue, I'm pretty sure that there are many areas that you can relax. We don't need such clearance, since I know as a conservation architect, the areas which we can find architectural monuments in this country. Let's go to the next step, to clearance of RDA. So RDA is playing a major role in road developments today. So they must keep proper records of present developments as well as future development so that they can minimize the issues in the approval process and also could advise UDA during the clearance process as well as the formal building approval process. The next point I want to highlight is NBRO clearance. Yes, NBRO is very important area, especially with regard to safety of building and safety of people. We have already identified disaster-prone areas in Sri Lanka. But my issue there is, especially the areas like Colombo and Kotte, so they insist NBRO clearance. My point there is, in case of a complex, large development, the architect and the structural engineers, M&E engineers, will take the whole responsibility of the building, the safety, the construction, during the construction, and the safety of public, everything. If there is no proper mechanism to monitor them, I don't think that the point is we have to, point cannot be justified why we need NBRO clearance for such projects. Then the next point I found in the clearance process in Condominium Management Authority, yes, they have developed a particular presentation to make consultants and developers aware on the related areas. But I have seen the knowledge of consultants, especially in these areas, has to be improved. So in their system, there are several steps to be followed. I think that will encourage fast-track development. We all have heard about TIAs, especially with regard to complex projects today. You cannot do a project or cannot get an approval without submitting a comprehensive.
Can you please conclude your speech, please?
Yeah. So these areas are very important. We have to look into. So before I conclude my speech, I need 2-3 minutes, Architect Jayanta Perera, to highlight the final key points. We have identified the common problems noticed by investors. No proper update information sharing mechanism among project approving agencies, no help desk to support our public inquiries, and no database available for quick response. No user-friendly booklet are available in those organizations for public use to avoid ambiguity in regulations and guidelines. And also drawings and documents should be scrutinized by persons in the relevant field. This is very important area to be addressed. UDA can hire consultants upon the recommendations of respective institutions if they don't have such capacities. The next point, we have identified the issues addressed by the government, central government, without trying to give that burden to the investors. Especially in our country, we have to improve public transportation to reduce the parking cost in buildings and also resolve the land issues. We must have a land bank with clear title deeds to reduce land related issues and to have clear records in street line and building lines and future developments for future public reference and upgrade our power supply without trying to burden our investors. And also central mechanism to improve water supply and central sewer system has to address. And in conclusion to my speech, we all know that time is money. Our developers meter is ticking just after purchasing a land, and our responsibility of our authority is very high. So better to implement a two-tier system. If there is any issue in delaying of approvals, we must also keep in mind in this country 85% of the total architect populations are entrepreneurs. Majority of quantity surveyors are entrepreneurs, and majority of our structural and MEP engineers are entrepreneurs, and we have very good local talents. And this sector can contribute about 10% of our GDP, and it can serve 10% of our population. And before I conclude my presentation, I must mention that if we look at today university intakes, we have 40,000 students. Out of them, we have 4,000 students we train as construction professionals. If they don't have proper recognition in these lines, especially in our industry, so they will try to leave our country. So we'll have to think our future. So I hope that I highlighted areas, the problematic areas in my presentation. With that, I would like to conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Architect borne, for that impressive presentation. I will give me a minute. I have noted certain questions, and there have been some questions from the audience. I will note them down, and I'll get back to you on that during the QA session. Our next presenter today is planner Lalit Wijeratne. He's a graduate from the Sri Lanka University, a master's from urban planning from Oxford Brookes, and PhD diploma in urban planning and management from Netherlands. He's a corporate member of the ITPSL and associate member of the IREW. Planner Wijeratne joined UDA in 1998 and served 23 years in the UDA. He has held many director positions in the UDA since 2013. Director Central Province, Director Uva Province, Director Strategic Planning, Director Eastern Province, and currently he is the Director Colombo Metro Region. Mr. it's a very good profile, very impressive profile, and Planner Wijeratne will be talking to us establishment of one-stop shop and why it's needed. I think this derives from the note that was said by the chairman, need of the day. I think that is this is the continuation of that. So in his presentation, he has mentioned a few important notes. I'm just picking them up. Adhering to the national policy framework, Stars of Prosperity and Splendor, and following its specific strategies, set up a citizen-centric digital government for the convenience of citizens, ensure efficient public service delivery, and creating free environment for investors. The UDA has decided to establish one-stop shop or one-stop unit to expedite application process for the issuing of approval and clearances. I think it's a very, very important area that Planner Wijeratne is going to talk to us. I'm now leaving and allowing Planner Wijeratne to present his presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. Now I share my presentation. Yeah, I think you can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear
see
you.
that.
Yeah.
This is the one-stop shop UDA going to be established within this year. Actually, as you know, at present, UDA is the planning approval agency for the country. The chairman UDA has the power to sign all approvals. Up to now, he has delegated his powers to 9 provincial directors, director CMR, and all local authority chairmen or secretaries. All these people are handling this power on behalf of the chairman UDA. In addition, I would like to say, we already have started online process since 2017. That is not a one-stop shop, that's a normal approval procedure. Today, I will divide my topic into 5 sectors. First, I will give some introduction. Then, what is the power and function of this one-stop shop? Who are the stakeholders? How this structure of one-stop unit has done, and the application procedure. Shall we go to the introduction first? The UDA leading single unit to facilitate developer. Then developer can submit single application for one-stop unit. He should not go to many places to submit many applications. He has to come only to the UDA. Then UDA will apply for clearances from other agencies on behalf of the developer. I think this is the critical point to all developers to go one office and another office. It will not like that. The developer should apply all clearances only from the UDA. The next one is all relevant institutions are represented in scope committee. I will explain what is the scope committee. It will be a legal body from the UDA. Then what is the establishment process of this one-stop unit? Identify all relevant agencies, designing application procedures, establishing scope committee, then selecting software developer procedure. Then we propose to issue a gazette notification to giving the legal powers to this scoping committee and establishing of one-stop unit. The objective of this one-stop unit is reducing time gap and processing period. That's the thing we have already discussed. The time gap is very long. It runs 3 months to 6 up to now. The next thing is high transparency application system. The system should be very transparency. Otherwise, many things can be happen, including delays. The next one is less complexity for developer. Advanced monitoring system and investment proportion. The investment promotion would be the next topic will do by veteran engineer Nisanka Vijayaratna. Let's see the impressive part of this one. The expedite application processing time. We will expect issuing planning clearance within 10 days, survey plans within 14 days, building approvals within 21 days, renewal approval within 10 days, and COC, certificate of conformity, issuing within 10 days. These are our ultimate expectation. These 4 topics I explained as introduction. And another thing I want to say, as a pilot project within this year, starting from September to December, we try to run this one-stop unit only within the Colombo Metro region area. It has 8 local authorities, including Colombo Metro area and capital area. Within next year, we hope to voyage this program into all UD offices in Sri Lanka. We have 22 sub-offices. We will voyage all UDA. At last, the phase 3, we hope to establish this software all over the country. There are 268 local authorities we have already declared. We will install all these local authorities within 2023. The powers and functions of this process, what we mean, to receive the application, process the application, evaluate, obtaining process fees and issuing approvals is the main objective. The another one is to apply approvals from line agencies on behalf of the applicant or developer. That means all line agencies will come to the UD and they will sit together and will take the decisions. To establish a scope committee with representative from line agencies and scope committee meetings. I will explain it in next few slides. To decide line agencies which shall be represented in scope committee. Another one is to conduct environmental consultative committee ECC and TIA also within that committee. We can avoid unnecessary delay from ECCC and TIA. These are the stakeholders what we have already identified for approval. You can see there are 32 institutions under 18 ministries. Currently, there are 18 ministries. Actually, there are 24 agencies. In Colombo Municipal Council, there are 6 different divisions are there. For a building approval, I don't think all the agencies should not come. Think about if you go for a high-rise building, maximum 10 to 15 agencies required for these approvals. The structure of this one-stop shop and the scope committee, you can see the scoping committee. The scoping committee will be headed by Director General or nominated by him as a chairman. Then director of that relevant area, and you can see the responsible person from each relevant institution. That means the person who I have shown in last slide, it may be 10 to 15 members from each institutions and all others from UDA, the clusters, deputy director, some other departments like that. These are the supporting staff from the UDA. That's called one-stop unit supporting staff. Then we'll see how we are doing this process. The step 1, the pre-visit. If some foreign investor, local investor, or architect, or any other applicants wants to do any development, he can visit to the UDA office first. That's a not an official visit. That's a casual visit to the UD office, and he can produce his expression. I have a land. This area I am going to construct. I hope to construct this kind of building. Give me the documents. Then we have already prepared a checklist for each development, and the applicant can get some idea about how much he should pay for the one-stop unit. Either he can select one-stop unit processing, or either he can go for the normal processing. The thing is, if somebody goes through the one-stop unit, he has to pay much money more than the normal process. The step 2 is the applicant can submit that his application via online or manually. If somebody applying from away from the Colombo or away from the country, he can submit to the via online. He has to create an account, upload the documents, pay initial payment for the application. I think already everybody knows this process because we are already following this online system. The another method is apply manually. If somebody come with all the documents, we can check all the documents. We can consult, create the account, and we are we are obtaining the processing fees and entering into the online process. There's a clarification I should say here. Somebody can ask why can't you do we are online the total process without having any manual process. The thing is, the first problem is we don't have license package, AutoCAD packages. Sometimes even the architects, sometimes even in our officers don't have enough architect license packages. Otherwise, many architect does not like to produce their original AutoCAD plans to UDA. Because of at this moment, we would like to apply manually. Then shall we see the application procedure? Here's the starting point. The blue color is the how many days consuming for a specific stage. The green color shows the cumulative days. To process the application, somebody can provide this application to the UDA. The UDA accept the application and we will assign a person, a town planner will assign for each project. The first day he will get the application and immediate second day he will visit the site. We have given 2 days to visit the site. Next, he will report all these things, and he after visiting the site, he will put all the things into the reporting. It will consume 2 days. Now altogether consume 5 days. Thereafter, for checking purpose, he put forward all these documents to his cluster head. Cluster head would be the deputy director or assistant director of planning in UDA. After completing this document, the document will forward into apply for clearance for relevant agencies. See, what are these relevant agencies? The most probably the electricity board, water board, RDA, and relevant local authority would be the prime relevant agencies. The depend on the cases, it would be the Central Environment Authority, aviation, or whatever other agencies. After completing the documents, UDA will send to the relevant agencies within 1 day. Now already consumed 8 days. The clearance will apply via online by the UDA on behalf of the applicant. UDA doing everything on behalf of the applicant. Then each institution can update their progress into the system. And document and processing fee will be submitted manually. We want to clarify here, in this stage, we are not paying all these relevant agencies payment through online, because we don't have these kind of facilities. On behalf of the applicant, we will pay this money in manually. The next step, the scope committee meeting. This is the most important step what we have taken in UDA. The people who are relevant to the project, all these gentlemen are the members of scoping committee. They represent all relevant institutes. Invitation will forward for relevant institution via online. Online accounts will be created for each institution and obtaining initial approval and consent. What we mean on this meeting, every agencies can tell their interests. Sometimes they may tell, think about the land reclamation can tell, yes, we can issue this approval without any problem. Even the agrarian department will represent there. Even they can say, yes, we can grant this approval. Now what is happening? There's some repetition. What I mean, if somebody goes to the land reclamation, they are asking clearance from agrarian department and UDA. If somebody comes to UDA, we are asking for clearances from agrarian department and land reclamation. This repetition will be not happening when we doing this kind of scoping committee. See, now already consumed 12 days. This scoping committee meeting result will be sent to relevant agencies. Step 6, you can see receiving clearances. UD officer will follow up this process and coordinate with developer and all the institutions. Here, the other agencies mean the relevant agencies has 9 days to process this application within their office, and they will send these approvals to the UDA. UDA collect all clearances and approvals via online. We are not consuming many days to get the hard copies. We can collect all these hard copies later. We are getting all these documents through emails within our system. After that, the application will forward to the planning committee for the approval. Within 4 days, we are approving the final approval. This is the process what we have designed for one-stop shop. What is the impressive and important thing when we use this system? The first one is time-based reports. We can get any time, we can divide it within the month, within the week, or the 1 year period, time-based report we can get through this system. The development details we can get, number of applications for this year to this local authority. Think about within last 6 months, how many applications came into the CMC, how many applications came into the Sri Jayawardhanapura Municipal Council, like that. The income details of the UDA or other institutions, the individual performance. There are many people engaged into this work. We can calculate the KPIs also through this system. The cluster performance means the division performance, the institutional performance, how UDA works, how land reclamation works, how Colombo Municipal works. We can assess all these things. Then application processing time is a very important one. As said Architect Rohana Herath, the DBI index is very important. Now we are in 91 place. After we start in this process, we are expecting to come at least 50th place in DBI index. Another impressive thing is the monitoring. The monitoring part is the most important in this process. See, each step will notify to the applicant. Overall process can be monitored. Even in the UDA officials, our ministry secretary, ministers, Prime Minister as our line minister, even in the HE. Nobody should ask from us, where is this plan? We have given authority to access into this process. Once they input the application number, they can search where is this plan. It's a delay within the UDO, in other relevant agency, or where is it, they can find. Then status of the application. in any stage, the applicant or anybody can, where is that application? If there are any black spots, is there any delay, there is a shortcoming, we can catch it. And institutional performance and application processing time also can be found. The transparency is coming with that monitoring process. If there is a good monitoring process, everything will be transparent. And I would like to answer some questions of Mr. Architect, Mr. Rohana Arais previously. Some irrelevant, not relevant agencies are in this approval system. That means for a high-rise building, sometimes he thinks some irrelevant agencies, we are requesting some clearances. With this scoping committee, the all agencies will come and see there. If there are any agencies not relevant to this application, then somebody can propose these agencies clearance is not very important. Then that document not necessary to take. And another impressive thing is we are calling for the investor and architect also for this scoping committee. They can sit as observers, not a committee member. They can observe what is happening to my application. It would be a very transparent method what we are going to do. And record keeping is another problem. You can see through this step 7, the all records are keeping. Then he asked about the transparency. You can see the transparency is not a problem with that system. And professionals errors, sometimes there may be professional errors coming through these applications. In addition to the scoping committee, the consultants are also inside of the scoping meeting. Therefore, they can answer at that time. Another one is the plot coverage. Sometimes more than 20-30% taking out from the land because of plot coverage PD lines and other margins. Recently, we gazetted our new regulation, July 2021. We have given many concessions through these regulations. Those are the things what I have to tell. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Diana. Thank you for that very informative information. And there are a lot of questions that have been put on the chat box, which I will come back to you during the QA session. Now, let us move to the third speaker. He is our own CEO, Engineer Colonel Nisanga Vijayaratne. Engineer Vijayaratne graduated from the University in Civil Engineering. He did his Master in Construction Management in the University of Technology, Loughborough, UK. He is a member of the Institute of Civil Engineers, UK, and member of the Institute of IESL, Sri Lanka. Engineer Vijayaratne has over 40 years career relating to engineering, starting from the State Graphite Corporation of Sri Lanka, then to State Engineering Corporation of Sri Lanka in Nigeria, and then a long career, Link Engineering as a director, and joined the 4th Regiment, Engineering Regiment Volunteer, Sri Lanka Army as commanding officer in rank of Colonel. Subsequently joined the state sector, serving as the chairman, CEO of Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment, Chairman CEO of Ceylon Tourist Hub Corporate, as Project Director in charge of Southern Expressway, as Secretary, CEO, and Chief Accounting Officer of the Ministry of Construction and Engineering Services, and as Chairman CEO of Institute of Construction Training and Development. What a profile. So I think he will tell us all about this whole issue because he has been involved in the private sector and also in the state sector in a big way. So he should be in a position to advise all of us on this. And since 2015, as the Secretary General CEO of CEI, we are very proud to have him as our CEO. Engineer Wijeratne will talk to us on the topic, a proposal to ensure building approvals in 3 weeks. He will be talking about early attempts at fast-tracking building approvals from GCEC in 1978, then to BOI, and UDH and LG functional effectively as one-stop approval unit from 1989 to 1993, and now to vistas of prosperity and splendor by HE President's Manifesto, where CCISL proposed to the President Commission as a solution on simplification of existing laws and regulations to establish a main planning committee and divisional planning committees as required with statutory authority to give planning and development approvals by amending the UDA Act. These reconstituted committees will be represented by all the relevant state institutions. Thank you. Mr. Wijeratne, up to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Major Udayanakara, Chairman of UDA, Engineer Major Rajit Kudileka, President CCI, then resource persons, especially Architect Lim Chu Kiang from Singapore, Rona Mandar, Planner Starit Wijeratne. I welcome all the presenters, guest speakers, and the participants. This is a very important seminar. What I am trying to deliberate this afternoon is to trace the background of these one-stop units and also to highlight where and how these one-stop approval units functioned for a while and had a natural death, and then remedy or alternate solution that the Chamber of Construction Industry has proposed through the Presidential Commission for the simplification of existing laws and regulations. Now, if you look at the earlier attempts at fast-tracking building approvals, I think the first attempt was with the establishment of Greater Colombo Economic Commission in 1978. Much investments after opening the economy. Now, this GCEC was conferred all the powers of a municipal council in the declared area. Then in 1992, GCEC was function, and later on just withered away, I would say. The main reason I would say these one-stop units
were people-centric. If the people driving those units were determined, then it worked. But later on, when they left, those units also just faded away. The main cause, what we feel, is these units were not statutorily established with assigned responsibility. They were administratively established units. Now, we just heard Planner Harit Wijeratne explaining the UDA proposal to set up a one-stop unit for approval of the plans with the scoping committee. It's a concept very good, but unless specific responsibility assigned by a statute, and what happens if that time limits are not obliged or adhered to, should be clearly defined. Otherwise, these one-stop units will, with the opening, it will function for a while. After some time, as the earlier one-stop units, this also might have a natural death. Now, what is happening is, as previous speakers mentioned, approval for a project can take anything between 3 months to 3 years. There are some projects which have taken even 3 years, which we are personally aware of. Part of the problem is, even though UDA has the statutory authority to give the PPC and preliminary planning clearance and the development permit, there are about 17 state institutions who also will have authority to decide on the planning approvals. So coordination with these different units is causing delays. Now, why we are much interested in expediting the planning approvals? As I think Chairman UDA and Planner Harit Wijeratne mentioned, on the World Bank ease of doing index, Sri Lanka stands at 99 at present. Now, if you compare with the regional country, the closest neighbor, India, which is a massive country with a population of 1,200 and with about 40 written languages being in use, they are ranked at 63. So you can just imagine a small country like Sri Lanka is ranked at 99 because we couldn't do our housekeeping properly, whereas India, which has multitude of problems, still they managed to be at 63. That means about 36 steps ahead of us.
Next slide, please.
Now, if you look at the present drive to expedite the planning process, it is emanating from the policy statement of His Excellency the President, Vistas of Prosperity and Splendor. I quote, "In order to facilitate relevant approval processes, we plan to establish a system in which all required approvals can be obtained by construction firms in one place or through the internet. Time taken for approval of any building to be constructed will be reduced to a total of 3 weeks. A system will be put in place to make all urban construction agree with prevailing urban development plans." So the President's statement in the manifesto is very clear that all required approvals to commence on a building construction should be issued within 3 weeks. So now, up to now, these building approvals, at least for the major buildings, approvals have been considered and granted by the planning committee of UDA. It is considering the applications for building approval for larger projects and approval is. Now let us look at what is the statutory authority of the planning committee. Now, if we have a look at the UDA provision under which this committee is established, I quote Section 8A of the UDA Amendment Act number 4 of 1982 on planning procedure. With a view to promoting and regulating the integrated planning and physical development of lands and buildings in a development area or part thereof, the authority shall, having regard to the amenities and services to be provided to the community, prepare a development plan for such development area or part thereof. Without prejudice to the generality of the powers conferred by subsection 1, a development plan may contain provisions in respect of all or any of the matters provided in the schedule to this law. Then the section 8B that refers particularly to the appointment of planning committee. For the purpose of advising, I highlight, for the purpose of advising the authority on all matters pertaining to the preparation, implementation, and enforcement of a development plan, there shall be appointed in terms of section 5 a committee, hereinafter referred to as the planning committee. Now, this is the planning committee that is functioning. Now, what is the statutory authority of this planning committee? It is advisory, not regulatory. Yeah, from above, it is clear that the role of the planning committee, from the above, it is clear that the role of planning committee is purely advisory and it has no regulatory authority. This committee has no authority to approve building plans. As a solution, CCI proposed to the Presidential Commission on Simplification of Existing Laws and Regulations to establish a main planning committee and divisional planning committees as required. Its statutory authority to give planning and development approvals by amending the UDA Act. These reconstituted committees will be represented by all the relevant state institutions. Now we'll go for the detailed amendment. Next one. Yes. Now, this is the draft amendment act that was submitted by us. And I must say, this was vetted by the Presidential Commission, which comprised two very senior President's Council, and they decided to include this as the first #1 proposal in the Presidential Committee report. Now, Section 8B1 of the Urban Development Authority Law number 41 of 1978, amended by Urban Development Authority Amendment Act number 4 of 1982, is further amended by the addition of words "and for the proper exercise, discharge, and performance of the powers, functions, and duties of the authority in respect of planning and development regulations made," after the words "development plan," and by the substitution of words "committees," hereinafter referred to as the main planning committee and divisional planning committees. So now with this amendment, the reconstituted planning committee will have the regulatory authority to consider the applications for building approval and also grant the approval. And we have proposed that there will be main planning committee and divisional planning committees as and when required. Now, these in our proposal, these planning committees will comprise of all the required state institutions. Now, DG, Urban Development Authority, UDA, will be in the main planning committee. Then there are several UDA officials. Then from National Physical Planning Department, authorized representatives of National Physical Planning Department, Ministry of Defense, Coast Conservation, Survey Department, Department of Labor, Department of Archaeology, Department of Irrigation. Next. Agrarian Development, Forest Conservation, Wildlife Conservation, Railways, CEA, National Building Research Organization, SLRDC, all the state institutions are included. Then we have included chartered from the institutions, professional institutions, chartered architect nominated by the Sri Lanka Institute of Architects, chartered structural engineer nominated by the Institute of Engineers, chartered town planner nominated by the Institute of Town Planners, licensed surveyor nominated by the Survey Institute of Sri Lanka, then a representative from the Chamber of Construction Industry. Now, these are the representatives from the industry. Next. Divisional Planning Committee. I can't see it. Divisional Planning Committee shall be established to cover specific development areas based on the volume of development activities to consider the applications submitted for planning clearance and development. So, as required, divisional planning committees can be established. As Mr. Lalith said, there can be 28 or 200 development planning committees. Divisional planning committees shall also comprise of representatives of all organizations mentioned in subsection 3. That is the organization mentioned in the main planning committee. There will be similar representatives in the divisional planning committee as well. All authorized representatives shall be nominated by the department, corporation, or state concerned with full authority to represent and take decisions on behalf of the organization. It's very important that the representative appointed should have the full authority to represent and take decisions on behalf of the organization concerned. The main planning committee shall meet on a fortnightly basis and divisional planning committees on a weekly basis to consider applications submitted for PPC and development permits. The main planning committee and the divisional planning committee shall be responsible for the issue of PPCs and development permits by the authority. The type of development activities to be approved by the main planning committee and divisional planning committee shall be as prescribed. So we suggest that type A buildings only type A buildings should go to the main planning committee. Other buildings could be handled by the divisional planning committees. Every person having adhered to the statutory planning requirements to commence on a development project has applied to the relevant planning committee for preliminary planning clearance shall be given such approval by the relevant planning committee within a period of 7 days of application with the relevant payment or be given valid reason for the disapproval so as for the applicant to rectify the shortcomings and resubmit in the event of a resubmit. In the event of resubmission upon rectification, preliminary planning clearance for such development project shall be given within 7 days of resubmission. if the application is certified by a suitable qualified person, if the application is certified by a suitable qualified person as prescribed, then the preliminary planning clearance shall be given by the relevant planning committee within 1 day, assigning the responsibility on compliance to planning and development regulations to the qualified person concerned, provided land ownership certificate is obtained beforehand. That means after rectification, whatever defect that was either pointed out, then if a qualified person has certified the application, it should be given within one day on resubmission. Every person who having adhered to the statutory planning requirements to commence on a development project has applied to the relevant planning committee for development permit. Now here we are talking of the development permit. Shall be given such approval by the relevant planning committee within a period of 21 days of submitting the application with the relevant payment, or be given valid reasons for the disapproval, so as for the applicant to rectify the shortcomings and resubmit. In the event of resubmission upon just rectification, development permit for such development project shall be given within 7 days of resubmission. The development permit issued as above shall be complete with all approvals needed from statutory agencies mentioned in section 3. That means all agencies included in the planning committee. And the next one is, if this is very important, if the approval or clearance of any statutory agency is not given, or valid reasons for disapproval not given within the periods mentioned in section 9 and 10 above, and if the relevant application is duly certified by a suitable qualified person with adequate professional indemnity as prescribed, then such application shall be deemed to be approved or cleared by the statutory agency concerned which has not responded. Thereupon, the authority shall issue the PPC or the development permit specifically mentioning the deemed approval of the statutory agency concerned. Now, this is a very important provision which we have included. In fact, even HE, the president, has stated that in considering the applications for building approval, this kind of strategy should be adopted. The next one is, thereafter the statutory agency concerned whose approval is deemed to have been given under section 11 shall not raise any questions and shall take every action necessary on the development as if due approval is given by the said statutory agency. Any qualified person certifying an application without complying with planning and development regulations will be committing an offense under this act and shall not be eligible to certify applications for a period of 5 years in addition to any other measures under the act. All periods specified above for the grant of approval shall be exclusive of weekends and public holidays. The authority through the main planning committee shall cause to publish the applicable planning and development regulations and all applicable requirements of the statutory agencies mentioned in section 3 above in the website of the authority to enable easy access by any person. Now, this is a very important requirement. In fact, even in one of the presentations this afternoon, it was mentioned that the state institutions have different requirements, but then developers are not clear about those. So there's no central place where we can get all these requirements. So what in this section requires that all the regulations and all requirements for the preliminary planning approval, clearance, and the development permit should be displayed in this website of the planning committee. So then any prospective developer will have to only refer that website to find out about the requirements. Then section 16, the authority through the main planning committee shall develop a web-based procedure to upload the applications along with the permit drawings for preliminary planning clearance and development permit on or before 1st April 2022. Actually, this is already there, but now what we are saying is the next statement. The permit drawing shall be prepared using standard software approved by the authority. With this procedure, the compliance to planning and development regulation shall be checked by a computer software package and results displayed online. After this date, all applications for identified construction projects as prescribed shall be submitted only through this web-based procedure. Now, I think in one of the earlier submissions was said that submission of soft drawings using a software is difficult because there are no licensed software, AutoCAD. And this can be overcome by the use of ZWCAD software. So this can be easily obtained without paying large amounts. Then next one, amounts, this is another important aspect. Amounts charged by the different agencies for granting preliminary planning clearance and development permit shall be regulated and gazetted. More specifically, charges for services connections for electricity, water supply, drainage and sewerage disposal shall be regulated by the Public Utilities Commission. All these charges shall also be published in the website of the authority by the main planning committee for easy access by any person. Now, these are an important aspect because what we find is different state institutions providing these services, there's no standard charge. Now, say if this applies to electrical connection, water connection, sewerage connection. So what we are mentioned here is these should be clearly specified and published in the website. When the new planning you can't see. No, I can't see the top part. When the new planning committees are established as proposed, that all applications for buildings classified as type A with more than 4 floors shall be referred to the main planning. This is what I said even earlier. I think what we suggest is type A building only should be handled by the main planning committee, but if the main duly considers, it can be changed. So even there you can have subdivision in even type A buildings. But now with above, it is expected that most of the project approvals will be issued within the time frame of 3 to 4 weeks. However, we have identified 2 issues that can still delay the planning building approvals, because in this draft regulation, I said, and a state institution can give reasons for not giving the permit. They must say these requirements have to be fulfilled. Now, two main areas where delays are happening now is the transport impact assessment. Now, what we feel is at present, the size of development is limited by access road width and the zone factor. If so, why do you need a separate TIA, transport impact assessment? Now, with the TIAs done hitherto, what has been achieved? I don't think anything has been achieved, and all the projects have been approved. So what we have found is this TIA is an unnecessary expense and a delay to a developer. So we are proposing that this requirement to have a TIA should be completely done away with, because the size of development is limited by access road width and the zone factor, and therefore even traffic to the roads will be limited by those factors. Then the next one is the IEE and the EIA. Now, what we have found is at present, it appears that these are insisted even for buildings for which these studies are not required. Now, if you refer to the Gazette number 772 of 22 of 18 June 1993, published under the National Environmental Act number 47 of 1980, only for following non-industrial buildings, IEE or EIA will be required. Of course, in certain environmentally sensitive areas like floodplains or sites with sites likely to have landslides, these may be required. Now, what are the buildings? A, integrated multi-development activities consisting of housing, industry, commercial infrastructure covering a land area of exceeding 10 hectares. Now, say in Colombo Metro, how many buildings will be there to be constructed on sites exceeding 10 hectares? The next one is involuntary resettlement exceeding 100 families, other than resettlement effected under emergency situations. Construction of hotels, hotel projects which provide recreational facilities exceeding 99 rooms or 40 hectares, as the case may be. Now, but now what is happening is, even for now, these are the types of buildings, non-industrial. What we found is requiring IEE or EIA. But now we have come across instances where these are insisted even for buildings for which IEE and EIA are not required by the Act. So to ensure transparency, it is proposed that whether IEE or EIA is required for a particular project, it should be decided by a subcommittee comprising of following members of the relevant planning committee: UDA representative, representative of CEA, representatives of SLIA, of architects, IESL, ITBSL town planners, who should not be in the staff of UDA, and representative of CCI. So this six-member committee should decide whether for a particular building IEE or EIA studies are needed. Otherwise, planning committee should give approval. Now, what is proposed above with three constituted planning committees will be a short-term strategy to expedite building approvals. To avoid corruption and delays in the building approval process, the most effective strategy would be to minimize human involvement in the approval process. We can learn immensely from the experience of Singapore on the online approval process, which will be elaborated by architect Lim Choon Chiang in his presentation, which will come next. We also should concentrate our efforts to develop an online approval system for building applications, initially for Type A buildings as provided in the Amendment Act. It is proposed that application of PPC and DP of Type A buildings shall be submitted online. Building plan shall be prepared initially using AutoCAD or ZWCAD, after 2 years using BIM. Compliance to planning and development regulations shall be checked using a computer software. Digitizing survey plans in urban areas where most building activities will be undertaken should be completed within next 2 years. With this, PPC and DP will be issued online. Now, to keep abreast of developments in the Asian region and to improve on our position in ease of doing business index, it is proposed that this online system should be fully operational within 2 years. To ensure this, it is important that a presidential task force is appointed to plan the development and implementation of this online approval process. Now, in the interim, even with the reconstituted planning committees, it is still possible that some projects will get delayed for reasons unknown. For this, the task force established as above could be empowered to act as an appeals board, look into the complaints of undue delays until the online procedure becomes fully operational. Thank you. This is my presentation on what we have proposed to His Excellency through the Presidential Commission on simplification of existing laws and regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vijayaratna, for that very comment. And I think you were almost on the dot as far as timing is concerned. So now we leave to the last presenter, overseas presenter, my friend, architect Lim Chong King from Singapore, who accepted our invitation to share the Singapore experience on the subject. Thank you, Architect Lim, for that. Architect Lim has 27 years experience, master planning, architectural practice, interior design, and project management. He graduated from NUS and is a registered architect in Singapore since 1997. He believes that 60 architecture can change the world and make the world more happy. He is currently a council member of the Singapore Institute of Architects, SIA, and chairman advisor of the following SIA trusts: Practice Trust, Compliance and Standards Trust, Architecture Business, Small and Medium Architecture Practice, and Digital Architecture. He is currently the managing principal and creative director of CKLNet Architects. Architect Lim has won many local and international awards, to name a few: Green Goods Design Award 2010 from the Chicago Enthusiasm, Museum of Architecture and Design, the European Center of Architecture. CTBUH 2012 Best Tall Building Award, Gold Award 2011 by World Association of Chinese Architects. He is also a part-time faculty of the Singapore University of Technology and Design. Ms. Architect Lim is going to talk to us about the Singapore story of the online submissions and approval process since 2001. We are the G2B, government to business, internet-based system known as Construction and Real Estate Network, current e-submission system. In 2016, the 2D submissions were converted to 3D submission via BIM. Hornet has transformed the laborious, time-considering, and complex building plans submission process into one which is acceptable, simple, and efficient in procedure and productive. Singapore Building Construction Authority was awarded with the Autodesk BIM Recognition Award for being the world's first government body to adopt 3D BIM online submissions in 2009. Singapore has not stopped. Now they are planning to launch Coronet system, be further redesigned, revamped, and launched in 2023, dubbed Coronet X. Among others, Coronet X will have features that would enable it to conduct automated checking of the 3D BIM drawings in very short time and will reduce building plan processing approval time tremendously. From there, I'm going to leave to the expert to elaborate on the success story of online submission in Singapore. And I believe our officials will take it as a challenge to be ahead of Singapore in the near future. Thank you. Over to you, Architect Lim.
Thank you for your kind introduction. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. CCI President-elect Architect Jayanta Perela, CCI Secretary General and CEO Engineer Colonel Nisanka Vijayarat, distinguished guests, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I hope wherever you are well and safe. It's indeed my honor, and I'm humbled to be invited to share Singapore's experience and journey on online submission and approval system in this prestigious forum. I would like to now share my screen. First of all, I would like to congratulate UDA for implementing one-stop submission system and a commitment to approve plans in a fixed time frame. Today, I'm very honored to share with you Singapore's 20-year journey and experience in online submission and approval of building plans. So this is the outline of my presentation today. I'll talk a little bit introduction of the history of the Coronet implementation in Singapore, and then what are the authority involved, departments that involve, and the registered architects and professional engineers involvement, types of submission and application that we do, typical submission process and workflow in Singapore, typical development process, and how it ties in with our submission and approval system. In Singapore, in our plan submission is a two-step submission. So we have DC submission and BP submission. DC actually is development control. So it's probably equivalent to the planning submission that you have. And BP submissions, building plan submissions or detailed plan submissions. And then once the construction is completed, then we will apply for TOP or CSC. TOP stands for Temporary Occupation Permit, and CSC stands for Certificate of Statutory Completion. And then I will briefly bring through how's the workflow of the submission, Coronet submission system itself. And I will end with looking back and forward on the Coronet system. So Singapore actually embarked on this online submission system in way back in 2001, which is exactly 20 years ago, 2 decades ago. And it's basically an online submission approval of building plans and various applications throughout the project life cycle through a G2B, government to business internet-based known as construction and real estate network, also known as Coronet e-submission system. So it's basically a pro-business initiative and a one-stop shop for building professionals to make electronic submission of building plans. We call it e-submission to almost all the government regulatory authorities. You can do it at any time from the comfort of your homes, your workplace, your hotel room, your bedroom, virtually anywhere in the world using a computer with an internet access. And it's also a one-stop electronic information hub for all the building codes, regulation, and event that related to buildings and construction. So over time, it evolved. So at the early stage of CONNECT implementation, so plans were prepared and submitted in two-dimensional computer-aided and drafting, which is in AutoCAD, MicroStation, or Graphisoft. So over time, from 2016 onwards, so the system has been refined, upgraded, and has evolved to allow e-submission of three-dimensional drawings using building information modeling, which is a BIM, for large-scale project. So currently, it's mandatory for certain projects with the gross floor area above 5,000 meters square. So for those projects which is less than 5,000 meters square, you can still carry on submit in a two-dimensional, which is AutoCAD drawing. So I believe it's a matter of time where everybody will pick up, and then all submission will be done through. And of course, the government is also pushing and giving incentive for architects and engineers to do the drawings in BIM. So there are other incentives. So currently, all the building plans are submitted via CONNECT are approved either. We have two systems. Through plan checking system, where the plans are submitted electronically, but it's still manually checked by the processing officer. And we have another system we call cell regulation or cell declaration, or so-called cell checking system. So basically, when we submit, the architects or engineer will declare that the plan submitted comply fully with the relevant regulation, and the plan will be approved within a few days without checking. So this system is actually implemented not for all projects. It's depending on the scale, complexity, or simplicity of the project. Since 2020, which is last year, building plans submitted in BIM will be auto-checked by computer system. So the government has developed a computer system with an automated checking system to enable the plan to be submitted in 3D BIM to be automatically checked by the computer without a human checking. So this is still at the very, very initial stage. So currently the computer is still not able to do 100% check, but it will, by going through the automated checking system itself, it will help the processing officers to filter a lot of check that he need to do it by human effort. So this is some of the authority department, for example, URA, our urban redevelopment authorities. So they have implemented auto checking on the GFA, which is a gross floor area. And PUB is a public utility board, which is also implement a so-called automated checking system. So they even give an incentive if the plans are submitted using BIM and checked by auto checking system, the plan will be approved or checked or replied earlier than if the plan was submitted without a BIM system. So the system is the auto checking only do checking for the three-dimensional drawing. So it's not able to do a checking on a two-dimensional drawing if you were to submit using AutoCAD or MicroStation. So yeah, we have come a long way. So what is next and future direction? So from CONNECT 1.0, so sometime end of this year or early next year, the government is going to do an upgrade to the CONNECT 1.0. So they are going to do a launch of a CONNECT 2.0, whether by end of the year or early next year. This is in keeping with the time and digital technology advancement. However, due to rapid pace of changes in digital and construction technology, CONNECT system will be further redesigned, revamped, and launched in 2023, and is called CONNECT X, like iPhone X. So I think one of the major features of CONNECT X, it will be automated tracking submission processes and automated checking of 3D BIM drawing in a shorter time. However, CONNECT X will not mark the end or final arrival of online building plan submission system, but perhaps it's the dawn of a new age of digitalization. It is Singapore's digitalization master plan to digitalize the entire value chain of development, construction processes from design, building plan submission, tender, through construction to operation, maintenance, and life cycle of the building. So our journey will continue. So since the implementation of CONNECT, so there are some achievements. So it has basically can transform a very laborious, time-consuming, and complex building plan submission process into one which is accessible, simple, efficient, and productive. So since its implementation, so Singapore has gained many accolades internationally, which architects Jayanta has shared. I will not go into the detail. So in terms of submission, so basically it covers almost all the plan submission to almost all the authorities that involve in the building construction industry. So it involves URA, which is the Urban Redevelopment Authority, which govern the planning submission for conventional and conservation projects. BCA is a Building Control Authority, which require us to submit building plan that govern barrier-free accessibility, buildable design, green mark, which is a sustainable regulation, structure plan, safety barriers, household and storage shelter. And we have national park boards, which deal with the landscaping planting issue. We have LTA, which is Road Land Transport Authority, which deal with vehicle parking, road transportation, and rail matters. National Environment Agency, which deal with environmental health and pollution control. And Public Utility Board that deal with drainage and sewerage issue. And we have a Fire Safety and Shelter Department, which deal with the fire safety issue. And there are a lot others relevant authority departments, which Civil Aviation Authority that deal with the building heights. We have a Defense Science Technology if you were to do so-called projects that deal with military. And we have a Port of Singapore Authority if you are doing projects close to the coastline, and etc. So there's a lot of other authorities and departments that we need to deal with, and all this can be done through a so-called online submission. So for the submission itself, most of the projects, the submission will involve registered architects and a professional engineer. So in Singapore, we call registered architects and professional engineer as a qualified person. So if you look at the Singapore regulations and codes, they will always mention about this term called qualified person. So qualified person actually refer to registered architects or professional engineer who are registered with the Board of Architects or Professional Engineer Board who are qualified to do a plan submission. So these are the various submission to the various authority, which various either registered architects or the PE professional engineer. So for professional engineer, we have a structural engineer, we call it civil and structural engineer, or mechanical and electrical engineer. So for the various plan submission to the various department, for various submission, there's a classification. There are certain types of submission is only to be submitted by registered architects, and some submission is only confined to the submission by professional engineer. But there are certain minor submission and minor projects which they allow to be submitted either by registered architects or professional engineer. So these are the next few slides, basically just to show the types of submission that is submitted either by registered architect, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, or civil and structural engineer. So in terms of types of submission, so there are many types of submission that we can submit through online for our projects. So we can do outline planning application, which is a submission that, for example, in fact, in Singapore, because Singapore is so small, there is only about 700 plus square kilometers. So almost every single piece of land in Singapore is being planned and zoned for use. So, but there are some of the land, for example, in Singapore, they zone as white site. They call it a white site. That means whoever owns the site or buy the piece of land, they are able to propose to the government how they intend to use the land. And for other types of land, which is fixed, for example, for mixed use, commercial or residential, but the government is open if a developer is willing to test for the change of use of land. So before they change, they can do this thing called outline planning application, basically to submit, to test out ideas, to see whether is receptive to the authorities. And then they also like to hear what the authority would, the requirement is if the piece of land, for example, is to change from a residential to a commercial land. Once the land usage is confirmed and the consultant is engaged to do the design, once the design is worked out, then you can proceed to do a formal plan submission. And then we have simplified plan submission. So certain types of submission or certain smaller scale project, we can do a simplified submission. And simplified plan submission is also almost same as the next category is called lodgement plan submission. So for lodgement plan submission, basically is, for example, a landed houses, just for example, a 2 or 3 story landed terrace houses, semi-detached houses or detached houses, where the authority regulation requirements are quite straightforward. And certain site where it do not have complex site requirements, so the authority will allow us to do a simplified plan submission or lodgement submission. For the lodgement submission is basically, it will lodge with qualified person's self-declaration of full compliance, and the plan will not be checked and you will be approved within a very, very short time. You know, once you submit, and then a payment notice sent to the qualified person or to the owner. Once the payment is made and the plans is approved within few hours, and then after that, you know, you can carry on with the process of, you know, construction. So that process is very, very fast. So for example, a small landed houses, you can design within 2 to 3 weeks or within a month. And once you do a lodgement plan, and you can actually start work within the next 1 or 2 months. So the fastest you can do is from the time you start doing your plan submission to the time where you start the work, it can happen within 2 to 3 months. That is how fast it can be. And waiver application is where if there's any, for example, for existing building where we are not able to comply with the current regulation or codes, then we would have to apply waiver application and give a reasons. And when it comes to the end of project, so we can apply for a TOP and CSC application. So for certain minor projects, it's actually, there's an exemption list, you know, in certain various authority code that certain types of minor works that do not need to do submission at all. So types of work requiring submission, for example, a new erection of a new building, reconstruction of existing building, addition and alteration to existing building, minor addition or alteration to building. And we have such submission called retention work. Retention work actually apply to certain old buildings that the work has been carried out without a proper approval, and it was found out by the authority, and then they required the owner to engage. This actually refer to so-called, we call it illegal structure. For example, a house owner, you know, get a contractor to do certain extension to their house, And they thought it's something quite simple, just do an extension to your kitchen or do extension to your dining room, on the ground floor or something like that. And they just approach a contractor and just get it built. And subsequently was discovered by authority that, because Singapore is quite strict, so any building works which doesn't fall within the exemption list will have to require to obtain a plan approval and a TOP CSC. So when such illegal structure, we so-called unauthorized structure are found, so the owner will be notified to engage a qualified person, which is registered architect or professional engineer, to so-called, we call it a retention submission, which is to regularize the unauthorized structure. So sometimes if the unauthorized structure can comply with the current code, then it's easy, just going through a paperwork. But if the unauthorized structure somehow encroach into setback line, it doesn't comply with certain parts of, for example, fire code, then the owner will have to carry out. So when the qualified person do a so-called regularization or retention submission, the QP will advise the owner to basically do alteration the work to comply with the current regulation. Then the plan submission will be carried out. And in such cases, under retention, normally the owner will get some fine as well, besides just get it regularized. Okay, typical development process, I guess is the same. This basically started with the client, have a brief and engage a consultant. You do a concept design, followed by schematic design, detailed design, design development, and you call a tender documentation. You call tender, you have a tendering process, evaluation, you award a tender, you get a contractor in and do the whole construction. And at the end of the construction, then you apply for the TOP or CSC. And then normally after construction, there are this defect liability period, or we call it a maintenance period. Just to give you ideas of what is the development process, because with this, then you understand in our submission system, how the two-step system come in. So the plan submission basically is two steps. So the first step is a DC plan submission, which is equivalent probably to your planning submission. So it's a submission which is actually focuses on the macro aspect of your projects. So for example, for URA, is concerned with all the setback line, your green buffer, your physical buffer, your building heights, and a maximum plot ratio, maximum gross floor area, and things like that. And for the, for example, for the sewerage department, at the DC stage, what you need is basically just to tell them where is your connection point, where is your last inspection chamber within your boundary that you are going to connect, and which of the public sewer manhole that you are going to connect to. And you do not need to submit a very detailed plan of your internal site, how you're going to run your sanitary system and within your building and within your site. That will be at the next building plan stage. So for the DC submission, basically it involves URA, a planning authority, and a few departments like Land Transport Authority, National Park Boards, Public Utility Board, and National Environment Agency. So at the DC stage, it doesn't involve Building Control Authority, which govern the building plan, and it doesn't involve our Fire Safety Department, which govern the fire safety. So basically, our submission to URA, the system is once you submit, if all the major planning requirement is complied with, they will then issue a provisional planning permission for the architects or engineer to comply. And then once you get a provisional permission, so basically in Singapore system is the engineer can actually start to submit and prepare their structure or piling plans to a building control authority and get the structure plan approved, and subsequently they can actually start work with the prerequisite of obtaining provisional permission. And in the meantime, then the architect also will have sufficient time to reply to the planning authority and subsequently got the WP, which is called written permission, which is equivalent to a formal planning permission. Then in the meantime, all the DC submission for the technical department can be carried out concurrently and independently. So the issue of written permission or the planning approval by our planning authority do not depend on the DC clearance. We call it a DC plan clearance from the technical departments. So when it comes to a building plan submission stage, so basically it involves a building control authority, which govern the building plan approval, and the rest of the technical committee, or so-called departments, which involve a building plan, a detailed building plan submission. So the condition of a plan submission to building control authority is that we must first obtain a formal planning approval from our planning authority, and then you can submit your plan to the building control authority for the building plan approval. So currently, the submission plan to Building Control Authority of Singapore for building plan approval is partially self-performance and partially a plan checking system. But the submission and the plan clearance are actually normally is within 2 to 3 weeks. So when it comes to the end of the project, so normally within 2-3 months before the end of the construction of the building, then we will start preparing for the temporary occupation permit. So for the temporary occupation permit, we have to get a so-called TOP clearance from all the departments that we submitted plan for the DC and BP. So normally it's quite a lengthy process, and it is happened within 2 to 3 months just before the completion. And once we get all the clearance from all the technical departments, then we will apply the final TOP with the Building Control Authority, which give the final temporary occupation permit to the architects or engineer or the owner. Until then, once the TOP is issued, then the owner can occupy the building. After the TOP is obtained, then the qualified person can proceed to apply for certificate of statutory completion. So because when we apply for TOP, the focus is basically focused on the building safety aspect, the functionality aspect of the building. So once the building is completed and sufficient and is good enough for owner to move in, to do a fit out of their building. So during the CSC, because there's a lot of other clearance, for example, clearance for the work outside the boundary. For example, when you have a main entrance, you do an entrance from a public road into your development, and it involves some work on the roadside where you have to do some planting on the roadside. You have to build some public drain outside the boundary. So these are considered as non-critical for the TOP application. So the authority allows such non-critical works to be completed slightly after the TOP, so that the QP can apply CSC after the TOP itself. So for TOP CSC application, again, is a 2-track system. So depend on the complexity and the scale of projects. If it's a simple, a complex project, normally it's a 2-step, 2-track system. So we will get clearance from certain departments for certain critical works. And then once we get a clearance, we will submit to BCA, and BCA will check through the document, and they will also conduct an inspection of the building itself, and everything is in order. Then they will issue a temporary occupation permit. And the second steps after TOP, then it will involve more, basically all the departments on all the work, internal, external, all the work. Once you get all the clearances, you submit to BCA. If cleared by BCA, then they'll issue a certificate of statutory completion. And that will mark the completion and conclusion of the architects or engineers' statutory duty for the projects. So if it's a simple, small project, the architects can choose to do a one-track system. That means you just plan, you can get all the clearances from all the departments in one go, and then you submit to BCA. And once everything in order, then BCA will issue a certificate of statutory completion. So these are basically the processes, procedure for plan submission for TOP application. Next, we are going into a CONNET submission process and workflow. So under the CONNETs, basically all the plan submission, all the application, everything is done online. You know, you can do it anywhere, 24/7, anywhere, anytime, you know, from the comfort of anywhere you are. So in order to start a CONNET system, so these are the prerequisites for starting and using CONNET. So in terms of hardware, basically you need to use a computer or laptop with a sufficient RAM and hard disk space. You need to have an internet access. On top of that, we have this NetTrust USB token for digital signing. So it's basically a small gadget. It's like a USB. So when we need to submit our plans, we need to digitally sign, and we call it encryption. We have to encrypt the drawing, which is equivalent to digital signing the drawing when we submit the drawing. In terms of software, basically you just need to have a common office, computer office application and OS software. And you need to have a common internet browser like Chrome, Microsoft Edge, or Safari. And for the submission, you have to download apps called ES Pro. Basically, it's electronic submission for professional. And in short, it's called ES Pro apps. And then in terms of trainings, you probably just need to attend 2 hours of hands-on training session on the use of CONNET, how to turn on, how to register, how to, you know, a few steps of how to do the submission. Okay, beside that, because submission electronically is required to have a system. So it's not just everybody's do a submission of the so-called CAD drawing and then you just submit. Basically, in Singapore, we have this so-called AutoCAD CAD drawing standard. We have actually a code of practice. We actually have a CP. We call it CP 83. That in order to do electronic submission plans, you have to draw your electronic plans in a certain layering system and the naming system and the numbering system according to the so-called the standard, which is called CP 83. So in order to do submission, so a drafter architects have to do a training on how to prepare submission drawing in accordance with the CAD drawing standard that is required. So if you will draw a CAD drawing, you do not follow the layering standard, when you submit, it will then automatically reject your plan. So when it comes to submission, for example, the first layer, for example, is a grid line. Second layer maybe is floor level. Third layer maybe is a wall. Fourth layer is different kind of wall. Fifth layer is different kind of wall. So it has a code that governs. Basically, there are more than 100 or 200 over types of layer. So you have to follow strictly the types of layer to draw your drawing and name your layer according to the typical convention and also the numbering system. So that when the plan is submitted to the authority, when the authority check the plan, and also the color of the drawing, the line itself. For example, we have a yellow color that show that these are the deleted existing building structure that are deleted, and then we have so-called cyan, a color which drawn in cyan that denote existing structure that to be retained, and we have a magenta color which show that the line is in magenta, mean is so-called a new structure or new works to be built. So when you look at AutoCAD drawing, which is drawn to CP83, it is very clear. Immediately, you just look at the color. Immediately, you know what are the new works, what are the existing works, what are the things that are to be deleted. And from the layering system and all things, so when the authority processing officer check the plan, they can just turn on and off the layer to see because in computer drawing, there's hundreds of layers. So sometimes it's very difficult to see everything in one layer. Just like when a plan is submitted in a hard copy where you draw 1,001 thing onto one layer. So it's very difficult to check, to pick up. But in the so-called CAD drawing standard that we submitted, it's very, once you see the color, things will just pop up and very clear. And by switching on and off certain layer, you help the processing officer or even the architects itself to check the drawing more easily. So for the beam in 3D, so there's a guide that is being implemented and mandated. So all the beam and 3D drawing that's submitted through CORNET, you would have to be drawn in certain convention according to the standard, because the standards is actually very critical, because when we do automated checking, the computer system need to recognize it's a program, using AI to pick up your line based on color, based on the naming and the convention, so that the computer able to check the plan scientifically. So now I come to the actual CORNET submission itself. So this is a desktop. You can see here, I have downloaded this electronic submission for professional, which is called ES Pro. So once you download these apps, what you need to do when you need to do submission, you basically just double click these apps, and then you will come to this page here. So in the page here, of course, I have already pre-recorded the password. So once you come into here, so you can see here on the top menu bar, you have new projects. You can add new projects. There are new ancillary projects. And then on the left side, you can see the scroll bar. So indicate a new projects, new ancillary project, project properties, and digital signature. You set recipient, send submission, send correspondent. So these are different functions. So when you just start a new project, you need to register a new project. So basically, you click on the new projects, and this dialog box will just come out. So you can then basically a few things architects need to do. First is to register a project reference number, and there's a convention basically for us to register a project reference number. So normally is based on our architects or engineers registration number. So for example, for architects, the first box is always start with a prefix of A for architects. For engineer, it start with a prefix of E. So for example, my registration number is 1417. So the first box, I will fill in A1417. And then the second box is basically the number of projects that I registered from the beginning of the year. So under A1417, and then the second box, I just indicate the first project that I register in January of the year, it will be 0001, and then followed by the number. And the last box is actually just indicate the year. So from this, when you look at the number alone, whether anybody, the owners or the architects or the authority, when they look at your project reference number, immediately they know this plan is submitted by which architects. And the project titles, next, there's a certain convention of how we name and describe the project titles. For example, we have new erection, we have to call it proposed new erection of 20-story condominium with clubhouse with blah, 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 something like that. And then you have to indicate all the commencement date, all the information, and then all the land information, where is it, what's the lot number, what's the plot number, etc. And next is to register the project So once you register a project, so these are the information that come out. For example, you can see reference number is A1417003. This is the third project that I registered in year 20 and 21. And this is the title for a proposed addition and alteration to a plant nursery. And then this is a category, you have to, what's the classification? And then next is to register members. So these are all the members. So normally we require to register the architects, all the professional engineer involved, the owners and the contractors, and some other specialist professionals that is required to be registered. So basically for architects who started to register a project, he will be a so-called a main coordinator. And the coordinator, so only the coordinator can do changes to the information on the project and the members' information. Okay, so every time when you register the projects or register a member, so an email will be auto-generated and sent to the architects and the people concerned. For example, after I registered the project reference number and project title, once I registered, immediately an email will be sent to me within a few minutes to inform me that, okay, a new project has been registered. This is the number and this is the title. And this is the number and title that we use for all the application that is related to this particular project until we obtain a CSC. And once you register any new number, email notice will be sent to the member as well to inform them. For example, this one I registered the owner. So you will send an email to all parties in the project itself to inform them that this new member has been registered. So next is to do a submission. Once you register a project with all the member information, because, for example, for professional engineer, if we do not register their name in the system, they won't be able to do a submission for that project. So it's important that we do a registration. So once the registration of project and member is in, next is to do a submission. So in the submission, normally it consists of, in the submission, normally there will be some application, there will be some letters, will be accompanied, some, so there will be an application form. So there's a standard form template in the system itself. So you go to the right-hand side, you see the circle, which called a form template. So you just click the form template. All the form will be listed for all the departments. For example, for the building control authorities, it has all the form that is required for various different types of submission. And the list go on. So you can see it's a very long list. So each of the authority departments, once you click, the form will then scroll down. So for example, I just do an example. For example, I do a fire safety submission, a building work contain fire safety. So I just click. So all the related form will just drop down. Then I will just click which form that I need. I'll just double click and I download the form. Then the form will be downloaded into my computer and then I can save it. Then I can just fill in the form electronically. I can save it in my computer. And then all the plans and drawing, we can do it in a separate computers. And once we are ready with all the letters, all the form, all the attachments, sometimes there are some supporting documents and some literature that we have to submit. So on the middle, you can see on the work area. So you can see all the projects, active projects that's all listed there. So once you do a submission, next step, you see, for example, I downloaded one form, right? This is a sample of a form, for example, a form that we do a determination of a person. So basically a determination of we call it occupancy loading for a building, for a fire safety submission. This is a form, one of the sample. Okay, next, once you get a form filled up, once you get the drawing ready, and once you get all the document ready, when you're ready for submission, so what you need to do is, I highlight on the left side, there's this digital signature. And then you can see a dialog box. Once I click the digital signature, a dialog box will appear called digital signature. Then I will just, from my computer, I will just pick and drop all the document into this dialog box itself. And then what I need to do, just click and highlight, and then I click OK. Once I click OK, it will then automatically encrypt all the submission documents and transfer and convert it to a so-called, we call it ENT format. So once we encrypt the form, when we submit, only the authority can open, or the QP himself can open the file. Any other outsider who receive this ENT file, .ent file, won't be able to open. So it's a kind of encrypted file. So once we encrypted all the document, which is digitally signed, then next is you click the button on the left side, it's called Set Recipient. Then a box will come out. Then you just tick which are the authority department. For example, you have BCA, you have City Gas, Energy Market Agency, Environmental, Environment, FSSD. So what you need to do is, in this box, you just tick which are the department that you wish to submit, and then you click OK. Once you click OK, then you go to the next step, which is called Send Submission. So what you need to do, for example, once you got the documents encrypted, once you indicate which department you are going to submit to, what you need to do is you look at the work area, you just click the projects that you want to submit, you just click, and then the submission will be just, the document will just submit automatically online. And then within few minutes, you will receive an email notice, and the owner as well, that tell you, okay, you have submitted for these projects, which plan that you submitted. So is indicate the name sent by, the indicate submission, the name of the architects, and then which authority department that you sent to. So it's very, very simple. And then after we submit, if the authority has any comment, if they need to issue any so-called, we call it a written direction or comment or written advice, they will then send a notice through email to us, which looks something like this. So you can see this notice, you indicate as a correspondent. That means the authorities issue a correspondent to you, and then you indicate sent by which department, and then sent to who. So the name here is actually normally indicate is sent to the owner or developer or the architects. And then if the plan is submitted, resubmitted, and everything is in order, and the authority want to issue approval, then they will send a notice to the architect as well. So you can see the correspondence stated here indicate clearance. So if we receive a notice in an email that indicate clearance, we'll be very happy normally, because we are receiving approval from this sent by this Fire Safety Bureau, and then you will send to the architects and the owner. So next is, this is another so-called Connect e-submission system. This is a web-based system which enable us to access to, for example, when you receive a notice from the authority that there's a written direction, there's a clearance. If happen that you are just somewhere, somewhere in the world, you are in New York, you're in London, you are somewhere, you do not have a laptop with you, but you have a handphone with the internet access, you can actually log in to the website where you can, it's a secure website. So basically every architect has a user ID and a password. So anywhere in the world, if you do not bring your laptop, or just happen that your laptop, doesn't work when you go to London, maybe the weather is too cold or something like that. So you can just use anybody's computer, or you can just use any public, just like some airports, they have some public computer system, or you can just use a handphone with a Safari. You can then access to this website and then log in your ID, your password, and then you will come to this page here. So under this page, you can see here, it allows you to check on your inbox or your correspondence with the authorities. and the projects that you registered in the ES Pro and the submission that you submit. There are certain minor submission that is also can be submitted through this as well. So on the left side, you can see I highlight, to collect agency correspondent for the past 2 weeks. So if I click number 1, then it will come to this page. Then it will list down all the correspondent that the authority sent to you over the last 2 weeks. And you can just click and then you can just download. So you can download in two formats. One is without ENT, one is with ENT. So if you were to be overseas, you do not have your computers, you do not have the ES Pro, or you do not have the USB digital signer with you, then you would just need to download a format without the ENT, so that this is a normal format, whether in Word or PDF, that will enable you to read the document from your handphone itself. So it's very friendly and useful. So this, it has a function here. For example, you can check on your projects, you can update your project profile, you can this is on the project member, so you can update. For example, you are somewhere overseas, you need to add in somebody, so you can actually do it online, anywhere in the world. So we can do an update on the member. So what you need to do, just look for the project reference number, the types of project stated, and then you can just do the changes online. And these are some of the minor submission that you can do through this web-based submission, e-submission system as well. So basically, as you can see, it's very simple. Once you get the drawing done in a certain format, the document is filled in a prescribed form. You do the encryption, follow through the procedure, and then click a few buttons, and then the submission is just done. So it's very fast and quick, and you can do it anytime, except for a certain period, maybe once a month or something, where they do a maintenance of the system. But anyway, they will inform us that, for example, okay, on certain days, the system will be down for the whole day or half a day, for maintenance. So during those periods, you won't be able to so-called do a submission, because the system won't accept. And besides submission, all the payment notice and everything is also done electronically as well. So in Singapore, since a few years back, basically all the submission fee is everything through internet banking as well. They do not accept, nowadays they do not accept check or even cash payment. Everything has to be done on a so-called electronic internet banking. So I think this is my last slide. So we have gone the wrong way. So just a retrospect and prospect of this Connect system. I think Singapore has gone a long way in developing this Connect, and there are lessons to be learned, and there are room for improvement. So our journey will continue. But notwithstanding, I think the Connect and the online electronic submission is not all smooth. When I present as if everything is so simple and smooth and without any problem, it has its own teething problems. There are some technical, there are some glitches. Sometimes when the internet is down, sometimes, internet system and technical system is not a perfect system. It does happen when we do a submission and somehow the plan just submitted, somehow it go nowhere and it doesn't go to the authority. For example, we received a notice to say, okay, your plan has been received by your fire authorities, and they will take certain time to reply. But somehow, technically, the plan doesn't go to those departments. And then we will just wait for 2 weeks and 3 weeks and hope that the plan will just get replied. But then, for some technical reason, the plan doesn't get across. So normally we will know for certain plan when we submit, we know that within certain times we will get some response. So if we do not get some response, then we will start to check, we will call up. Okay, so under the Connect system, basically they have a group of technical people who man the system. So whenever we have any system problems, submission or anything to do with the submission, there's a group of people who are standby to take the phone call. You can just ask them what is the technical problems, or for some new user, you can call them. They can, brief you, guide you how to do the submission properly. And sometimes for submission, for some reason, for technical reason, sometimes you do everything right when you submit, but somehow the system is keep rejecting. So you need help. So you have to call up. There's a hotline that it's not 24/7. It's just Monday to Friday in normal office hours. So if you were to rush some submission on public holidays or long weekend or something like that, then you probably have to wait till the next working day before you can get access. So it's not a perfect system, I must say. It's not something that that will cure all the problems that we face in plan submission. There will still be some technical, some human problems, because the plan will still be checked and processed by human beings. So, some of the human error, some of the human factors are still something that we still have to deal with. So perhaps with the new automated system where we do not need to deal with people, basically then the computer system itself will then process. But again, I believe the AI technology is advanced at the moment, but it's still probably is not mature enough to be as intelligent, as adaptable as human being. So when you do a plan for human being, you can decide, for example, where to place your fire extinguisher, your hose rail. There are 1,001 ways, but in computer using AI, there are only certain way you can program. The computer won't be able to program, and work like a human brain. But as a whole, I must say, while there are some hardship of implementing CONNETs, for example, once you implement the whole online system, you basically have to revamp, and basically the whole work processes will be digitalized. So formally, if you are used to doing manual drawing, drafting, and all things, once you implement an online system, the whole work process will be changed. You have to revamp the whole system, you have to digitalize. And of course, there are upfront capital investment in terms of hardware, software, training, and the downtime that the staff, spend on training, on non-productivity, at the initial, the learning curve and things like that. And also there are some teething problems that normally we encounter whenever a new system, whenever some changes. It's just like when you buy a new iPhone or any new version of the phone, the first few months, there are always some teething problems that we have to deal with. But at the end of the day, there are more rewards than hardship. Basically, CONNET is really simplifying and streamline a lot of processes of plan submission and application. And CONNET is also a starter, it's basically the beginning of a digitalization process. And it really saves time. You do not need to travel to submit plan. You do not need to go for printing of your drawings. Once everything is done digitally, so it's more efficient, it's effective. And it's also more sustainable. You do not need to print paper anymore. It saves paper, save a lot of traveling time, save a lot of, it's also lower carbon footprint, so-called. And also in terms of health and safety, the whole system is enable you to work from home or anywhere in the world. So it's very conducive for remote working, for telecommuting, especially during pandemic and epidemic crisis. And there will be less human contact. And on top of all this, after you have achieved all the saving of time and productivity, it helps to save costs, which is something that is the biggest reward. And of course, with the system and all the standardization, it will then, set higher standard in terms of the drawing submission itself. So I think with this, I conclude my presentation. Thanks for your patience. I hope that my presentation, my sharing is informative and useful to you and a good lesson learned. So we have gone a long way. Perhaps once you implement a new system, you can shortcut and able to do it in a shorter time and able to move much faster than us. So once again, thank you very much. Thank you, Architects Jayanta, for inviting me. Really honored, and I'm really humbled to be invited to share our experience, in this online submission. So thank you very much. And if you have any question, you may feel free to raise after that.
Thank you very much, Salim. Thank you very much for that long and precise explanation of the system that you are operating in Singapore.
වහලට ගැලපෙන සීලිමුකුත් තියෙන්නේ කලරා. ඉනි ගන්නෙත් නෑ. වේයෝ ගන්නෙත් නෑ. රුඩු කෑල්ලෙත් නැහැ. පරිසරයට බරකුත් නැහැ. මේවනේ මල්ලි ceiling. Color Up Strip Ceiling. Show your true colors to the whole world.
අපි ගලීවල් රැලින් හැම එකට යන්නේ කොහොඳයි කියලා. ඒතර මේකේ ලී පෙන්වුම තියෙනවා. බැරිවම හැමෝටම ලී පෙන්වුමක් තමයි ඇවිල්ලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒක අපි බලාපොරොත්තු ඉෂ්ට වෙලා තියෙනවා. මේ පැත්තෙන් ගත්තාම අපිට එතන ප්‍රශ්න විසඳෙනවා. අනිත් එක වාතයේ කෑ වගේ පරිසරයට එකට සතුන්ගේ වෙන හානිය නම් ඒ ප්‍රශ්නත් විසඳෙනවා. ඒ හින්දා තමයි ගොඩක් මේකේ මේ වගේ දෙයකට යන්නේ හොඳයි කියලා.
අර වුණා ලස්සන ගොඩක් කාර්යයක් පවතින හොඳ අපිට කාටවත් අවුරු දැක්කාම ඒ දැක්ක ගමන් මේගොල්ලන්ට ඒක ආසීතන විදිහේ ගයක් හදන්න.
Is it done, Kapila?
Small, one more. Just a small one.
වහලට ගැලපෙන සීලිමුකුත් තියෙන්නේ කලරා. ඉනි ගන්නෙත් නෑ. වේයෝ ගන්නෙත් නෑ රොඩු කෑල්ලෙත් නැහැ පරිසරයට බරකුත් නැහැ මේවනේ මල්ලි සීලිං
Color up, strip ceiling. Show your true colors to the whole world.
Yeah, the moderator, Architect Jayantapara, will field your questions sent into chat box accordingly. Mr. Jayantapara.
Okay, I questions that was on the chat box. I've collected them. I written them down, so I'll go from the beginning from first presenter, Rohana Bandara, architect. There is a question from the party. Are the professionals ready to accept the online submissions fully? That is number one question. Number two question for Mr. Herat is, will the professionals accept total liability of adhering to regulations and the liability? Mr. Rohana, can you just?
Yes. Number one is, I think we have been dealing with softwares for, I think, last 15, 20 years. I hope all the professionals are ready for that, online submissions. And in the case of professional liability, so I see two issues there. We must know very clearly what are the regulations. So what are the responsibilities and liabilities? Then I think all the professional will take that responsibility, because that is why I was trying to highlight my presentation. There are many gray areas in our approval system. Nowhere in our supporting authorities has any clear directions or a properly compiled booklet for our professionals to read and understand.
I think that was pointed out by Mr. Nisanka Vijayara, engineer Nisanka also, that we should have a compiled document with all the clearances required and the regulations covering all the aspects of those clearances. Yeah, thank you very much, Rohana. I think we have a long question, lot of questions for planner Lalit Wijayaratne, as usual. I will start from one. How do you expect the one-stop shop to be successful this time? Because we have tried at several places. So is there a I think there is going to be a mechanism of authority and things like that. So if you can just very quickly explain how it's going to work this time. Lal, your mic is muted. Lal, can you hear me? Mr. Wijayaratne, can you hear me? Mr. Wijayaratne, your mic is muted. Looks like there is some technical issue there. So shall we go to Mr. Nisanka Wijayaratne? Now, Nisanka, there was a statement made by Mr. Lalit Wijayaratne that the UDA has the total power, or the chairman has the power to approve any building development in the whole of the country, and that the UDA has transferred the power to different local authorities. At the same time, you were mentioning that how can, you were saying that the UDA approval, is there a, whether the UDA has powers or the committee does not have powers. So can you just explain what's the difference between these two?
No, actually under the UDA Act, UDA has the authority to give the approval for the preliminary planning clearance and the development permit. But the planning committee, what is functioning now, it is advisory committee. So, but what is happening is plans, applications are being considered and approved by the planning committee, which is not correct. The role of planning committee, as per that, is advisory. So that's what we in our proposal we are converting that into a regulatory committee.
Regulatory, right. Then there was this other thing about the local authorities. Now, there was a statement made by Mr. Lalit Vijayaratne that UDA has deputized or given powers to the local authorities to approve. But I can remember somewhere down the line, I can't remember exactly where, that there was a thing that under the local government law or act, that the local authorities have power to approve their areas. So can we just clarify that?
Actually, UDA has the authority to give the planning approval for the UDA declared areas.
Ah, right. Not other areas.
So this is a debatable point because even on the Town and Country Plan, Town and Country Planning Act, local authorities are exercising power. So that's why in the end the power has to be shared between local councils and the UDA, but still UDA has the jurisdiction over UDA declared areas. But the entire country is not declared as a UDA area.
Right, okay. So there is a little ambiguity in that place. Mr. Lalit, there was this question, I think you were not there or something. How do you expect the one-stop shop to work this time? Because Mr. Vijayaratne's presentation gave certain the types of one-stop shop that happened, but ultimately it did not continue. So how do you think that this time it will work? Are we having to give some powers to the one-stop shop organization or what?
Yeah, within at our present regulation, we have designed this one-stop shop. But anyway, today I saw some impressive regulations has made by Mr. Nisanka Vijayaratne and his team. In near future, if they can gazette these regulations, we can adapt it to our regulations.
Now, one of the questions, Mr. Mr. Kanch Chanda asking whether this regulations that you or the amendments to the act that you presented, are they approved or they are only proposals? Proposal, right, okay. There was a question from Mr. Kanchanda. Does the clock stops if once you submit it and then there is a what do you call some information balance not given and that goes back to the developer, so until it comes back with the proper information, whether the clock stops? That was from Mr. Lalit Vijayaratne.
Yeah, can you explain it again?
Yeah, supposing somebody has done a submission and the committee has gone through and there is some, while the committee is going through, the developer wants to do some amendments, right?
Yeah.
So he submits the amendments. So until that new amendments, the previous period is gone and the new time starts ticking. I think that is what it should be.
Yeah, actually, we have gazetted our new regulation very recently. July 2021. It says somebody can, initially we are giving approval for 1 year period. Thereafter, he can continue for another 3 years. If there is any amendment, he can submit this plan within that period. But anyway, we saw some shortcomings, and the 3 years period are not enough for a development. Therefore, we are going for a amendment of the Act in near future. We have identified that case, and we will amend the Act. Presently, we can't change it through the development regulations. It is in the Act.
Yes, I think that's very clear. Then there was one Mr. Chagoda, I think, mentioning about a system that is in India called the Tegan system, Tegan state, where online submissions have been very, very fast and supposed to be the fastest in the world. I don't know. Have you got any, I mean, being a official in the UDA, have you got any link to this Tegan system, state system?
Actually, we have studied many countries how they are approving the building applications. Especially, we studied Malaysia, Singapore, UK, and some other countries. Actually, we couldn't follow about this case.
Right. Okay. So, yeah. The one-stop shop for. There was a question from an architect, Ratnasiri, asking, is a one-stop shop is only for the more specific or bigger projects and not for medium and lower projects?
Actually, it's like that. UDA normally approving more than 4,000 square feet or 1 acre land. That means a much bigger one. Even somebody wants to get that one-stop shop, the small one, we can consider, but the price is very high. We're supposed to charge 4 times of normal price.
Okay, so those are the questions from Mr. Lalit Vijayaratna. And before we go to the audience, there is some questions for Mr. Nisanka. Yeah. Now you said all authorities, requirements of all authorities should be catalogued and should be available as a document in the UDA. Is that what you meant, or
planning committee site?
Else?
Yeah.
Okay. Planning committee site, so it should be available.
So that anyone can.
Yes. Yeah. So those are the questions that was asked. Then one final question. There was somebody asking from Mr. Vijayaratna, how can we equip our professionals to be BIM ready?
Well, we have to run a training program in the first place, because we don't have many professionals who are competent to use BIM at the moment.
Yes.
That's
So
why
we
we
need
have
to
said
work out.
That's why we have said the BIM application should be adopted somewhere after 2 years. So in parallel, we should have a training program for the practitioners to be BIM ready.
Yes. Because if our end plan is to go for online submissions in the future, then we need to get ready for that from now itself. Now there are some questions for architect team.
Anyway, many projects by foreign investors are even now in Sri Lanka are on BIM.
On beam, yes, correct. That's right.
Yeah, like Port City. Everything is on beam.
Correct. There is some questions for Mr. Lim, Architect Lim. Now, in your presentation, you showed there are 20 odd clearances that has to be gotten when you submit. So, is these 20 odd clearances are also submitted? As you said, you showed some forms for each one. So, are they all submitted together or one by one? Or, I mean, is there some explanation on that, please?
Okay. So basically, under the system, most of the submission, you can actually do it independently at your own time, except for a few types of submission which is required a prerequisite. For example, a building plan submission to Building Control Authority, you can only submit after you obtain a formal approval from Planning Authority.
Right.
Other than that, most other submission, actually you can just submit concurrently or independently. So you do not need to wait for one or another, basically.
Then there was another question. Are all technical submissions like MEP to be done at the initial stage itself, or it can come subsequent stage?
Okay, in our old system in the past, we have to make sure all the technical submission from all technical department obtained before the planning authority give the planning permission. And then when it comes to BP stage, we have to get all the technical clearances from all the technical department before we can apply for Building Control Authority. But since many years ago, we have abolished that system. So beside the requirement to obtain planning approval before we submit building plan, the rest of the authority technical department submission is actually all independent. So in fact, you can obtain your building plan approval from the Building Construction Authority, but you may not have obtained your technical building plan approval from your fire safety department, from your sewerage department, from your environmental department. So the requirement is, as long as you get all the plan approval just before you apply for TOP. So basically only the planning approval and the building plan approval, which is dependent on each other. The rest of the plan approval are actually independent. So you can actually, you know, those, they allow you to do it up to the point where you apply TOP. But of course, we have different statutes. For example, a fire safety, we have a fire safety regulation say that you cannot start your fire safety work unless your fire safety plan is approved. So it's in the way, it's self-regulation. So they do not impose, but the QP or the architects actually have to then check on the program to make sure that he get his plan on time for the contractor to start work.
Right.
Yeah. So it's
So
actually
that
quite
same,
independent and free and easy actually.
On the same line, there was a question. Does the individual professional takes full responsibility from application to completion?
Yes. So basically every project we have registered architects and professional engineer. So these are the few persons who are actually taking all the responsibility for their submissions. Yeah. And in Singapore, the system is very strict. The system is actually a person-centric system. So wherever you work, whether you own a company, you work in the big companies, or you're directors of a company, when you submit plan, you submit as an individual actually. So if anything happened to the project that you sign, the authority will hunt you down. They don't care whether the company has collapsed, has bankrupt, you have already, you know, no longer at works or something. They basically go for the person. And that is the stress that architects and engineers in Singapore is taking.
Yeah, I think that's very important. Then there was another one. Can non-professional architects submit drawings for even small scale buildings?
No, totally no. In Singapore, there is actually Singapore is very, very strict. So under the Singapore law, only architects or engineer, a qualified architects and engineer can submit plans. So non-registered architects and professional engineer cannot do the submission. In fact, the law is so strict that, in fact, they don't even allow a non-registered architect and engineer. For example, you freelancing and then you find a registered architect or professional engineer to sign and do submission for you. So in fact, in Singapore, it's actually outlawed for anybody who are not registered as an architect engineer to provide design or so-called architectural or engineering services. So in Singapore, it's actually outlawed.
That's very good. That's a very important topic. Then the last question from you is the CSC. So obtaining the CSC, the submissions are again online, or is it
everything is online?
Like that?
All online.
Submission is online. Okay.
Yes.
I think that covers the questions. Now I have a request from my teacher, Architect Ashley DeVos, for allow him to talk for 2 minutes. Ashley, are you around?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, please. It's yours.
Thank you. Hi, Nisanka. I'm seeing you after about 30 years. You look fine. Also, I must congratulate Lim Kion. Slightly different.
Ashley, we can't hear you well.
Yeah, it's not clear. You are faint.
Oh,
you're faint, Ashley. Your voice is faint.
Now, better?
Now it's okay.
Slightly better.
It's better now, is it?
Oh, yeah, it's okay.
Okay. No, so basically, I mean, I see the problem slightly differently because approval is not a case of just filling forms and so on. But because we have no proper planning system in Sri Lanka. That is, to me, the biggest problem. Because we are looking at speculative planning and not urban planning. This, to me, is a great worry because we should have, first and foremost, have a master plan for Colombo. We don't have one. And then we should have a master plan for all our cities. We're talking about approving buildings. But how do we identify what should be accommodated and where? So that we create a holistic city. That has not been considered. Now take, for example, the URA in Singapore, which I visited from the 1990s. They had a master plan. Then they had envelopes for buildings and so on, all created. Now we are looking at high-rise buildings, but high-rise buildings should be tested in a wind tunnel. I don't think we do that because the effect of a high-rise building on the other high-rise building is critical. And I think this is very, very important, and we don't. Then, because if, say, for example, if it has an effect, there has to be a change in the design of that building. Now, if a master plan exists, then all the necessary approvals for the different agencies and all can be made available. Now, if you look at BIM, for example, it presupposes that all the other agencies as well are competent in the use of this material. It's not only the architects and the engineers and not the UD, but archaeology and all the other departments should also be competent in the use of this material. Otherwise, it doesn't work, So I think these are important. Then, for example, at times, approval is used requested for buildings, which should not be there in that place at all because of some political requirement. And one of the say, for example, the successors of Singapore is that they don't have political interference, So these are issues that have to be cleared, first before we get into talking about BIM and all those type of things. There are basic things that have to be sorted out. And a master plan, it doesn't change. Now, the new UDA regulations, there was a regulation 2 years ago. Now it has been changed again because some politician wanted it changed. I mean, we cannot do that. You must have a regulation that is there for some time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ashley, for that comment. And I think, is there any other question? Mr. Ranjit Gunatilaka? President,
yes,
you have any?
Yeah. I'm asking questions I didn't want to come into. Only few. One from the Mr. Lim with regards to your qualified persons and the architects and the professional engineers. You say only individuals allowed to approve, but how about the individuals' capacities when you compare to the total project volumes that you consider? Any guidelines, or any individual can take any capacity of buildings or the development?
Yes, in Singapore, as long as you are registered architects or professional engineer, so there's no, currently there's no control to say what kind of scale projects or what types of project that, as long as you are registered architects, you can actually do any types of projects. Yeah. So normally a professional, of course, they will take up job according to their specialization. So if you have not done a hospital, you probably wouldn't dare to take a hospital project because it's so technical and so complex, you know. And if you don't do it correctly, and Singapore, basically the law is very strict. So if you don't do properly, the consequences can be quite adverse.
Right. Thank you very much for that. I understand. The second thing is just to bring it to the question that Ashley was raised. No, in the high-rise buildings in Colombo or the other areas, they always consider the wind factor, and also they do wind tunnel test to see that how the other structures are affected. This is just for the information. Jayanta, thank you very much. The way that you conducted the whole program, and I have got so many references from many people thanking for this webinar. So that is the whole thing, and especially very long, very prescriptive presentation done by Mr. Lim. Thank you for sparing with this our chamber and giving the correct picture of what is happening in the Singapore and to know where we stand. Thank you, Mr. Lim, and all the others. Also, thank you, Jayanta, moderating. This is a presidential thank, but the official vote of thanks will follow. Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you, Ranjit. Thank you, Lim. Now, if there are some very specific questions, we will be able to take it up. If you raise your hand, Kapil, you can unmute the mics. If a couple of people, they raise their hands, we can allow.
Okay, Mr. Asita Patirage.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes, yes.
Can hear
Go
you.
ahead.
Yes.
I had two questions from Engineer Vijayaratna. One is on this proposed planning committee, whether it can be limited to representatives from relevant authorities only, depending on the applicability based on the type and the location of the development. Second question also is from him. How would this proposed amendments or the same would act the 13th amendment? Because there had been cases, I know, certain provincial council approved a law preventing any other contractors applying for their jobs other than the contractors in their own province. I don't want to name the province. I don't know what the position now is. This was when I was the chairman of ICTAD. Would you like to answer on that, please?
Mr. Vijayaratna? This is from Nissank Vijayaratna or Mr. Lalit Vijayaratna?
Yeah, Mr. Nissank Vijayaratna.
Yeah, Nissank.
Yeah, the planning committee, we have included all the relevant agencies, but then for a particular project, all the agencies may not be required. But then when we are statutorily establishing a committee, we can't have a committee changing from project to project. So this is a standing committee, but then I think there are about 20 odd members, but maybe 15 will be required for a certain project, maybe for another project only 10. But then they can develop even an online system for the committee to have their deliberations. I mean, those who are not concerned can be silent or can give approval online. Because if an agency does not respond within the specified time limit, the planning committee is empowered to take the approval as deemed to have been given.
Yes, my point is there are obvious cases if you are doing a development in up country. I mean, there is no relevance to the referring it to the coast conservation department. And
that's true, yes.
Like that, yes. So if there's some kind of a provision, of course, in my personal opinion, what I'm saying is, if you have such a big committee, the provincial council or the local authorities, the way their attitude is, number one job will be they will starting a new building project for the meeting room. We have experienced that with the current system. Yeah, do you have any this with for the second question on the 13th?
Yeah, second question. I think still the UDA planning regulations apply. Even local government councils are exercising authority in respect of UDA declared areas on the power delegated by UDA. But of course, construction subject per se is a devolved subject. So the provincial councils can publish their what you call the statutes and then have different rules. But then planning approval, I'm not too sure that it's a devolved subject.
Nice.
It comes with the National Physical Development Plan and not really construction.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other hands, Kapila?
No, that's it.
Okay, then thank you very much, everybody. I just want to mention that during the most of the period, except for the last 10 minutes, we had over 200 participants, and I'm very happy about it. Thank you, Nisanka and Kapila for running this show very well.
Yeah, I would like to thank the speakers, the presenters, and the moderator who gave their inputs to make these sessions very fruitful. Officials in all the organizations who encourage their members to join this session, our grateful appreciation. Before we wind up this session, I would like to thank Rhino Roofing Products Limited for your generous support for sponsoring this event. This webinar was organized by CCI in realizing the national needs to the mechanism to expedite building approvals as the apex representative body of the construction industry stakeholders. We have found this essential to attract more investments, especially FDIs. CCI can contribute effectively with the interventions from the development of the construction industry only with the cooperation of industry corporates. As such, we kindly invite you to join CCI as members if you have already not joined. I would like to mention that the recorded version of this webinar will be available and we will forward the link to all registered participants. Dear participants, thank you very much for your participation and hope that these proceedings were useful to you. Thank you, CCI staff, who gave their fullest support to make this session a success. Hoping to meet again at the next event soon. Please stay safe. Thank you and have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Architect Lim. I'll get in touch with you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay
Bye,
safe
bye.
and
Thank you.
be healthy. Okay, bye. Catch you again. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Lim.
Thank you.